Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. Before the show starts, I just wanted to recommend, if this daunting 2.5-hour runtime scares you, it scared us too. We didn't realize how long we talked for. It is an awesome episode, but I do suggest if you want to get through the episode a little quicker, hitting the dial below and setting your speed to 1.25 or 1.5 speed. That'll help the episode go by in a normal hour and a half, hour 40 runtime. We don't want the show to feel too long or too slow for you guys. We do talk the entire time, but we had some technical glitches that I had to pop out a few times in the video. So if you want to see the video in its entirety and don't have all the time to spend sitting down for 2.5 hours watching us, it's longer than a Marvel movie itself. So I recommend going to the dial below on YouTube and hitting 1.5 or 1.25 speed, and that'll make the video go by a lot faster and you'll still catch all the words we say. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, please share with your friends. Have a great Monday and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. Special because we are officially in the Marvel off-season for 1 week exactly. Or 2 weeks, I guess. So, Kelsey, first off, hello, Kelsey.
Hello, Dill.
I always forget to introduce us. I've been better at it, but this time I forgot. But
hey, no big deal. You saved it.
Yeah, but we are in the off season, so no WandaVision, no Falcon and Winter Soldier. So we're in this middle 2 weeks of having nothing to watch. Or nothing, of the Marvel canon to watch. We might have some stuff we might have been watching other places. But we decided to do a villains ranking for our first off-season podcast. But first, before we get into all the villains, because I know that's why you all are here, but we gotta keep up the tradition. We're bringing our Marvel headline of the week. Kelsey, I will go first this time.
Okay.
Just because I feel like going first.
Take the floor, Dill.
So it was just reported as of today that Avengers Endgame is no longer the #1 highest grossing movie of all time.
What is
domestically. That is because Avatar got a re-release in theaters in America, and because they re-released it in theaters and it grossed enough money to outrank Avengers Endgame, it is officially now back at #1 for the highest grossing movie in America.
Wait, it re-released it like recently?
Like this past week, Disney, because now they own Avatar, put Avatar back in theaters because there's not a lot of new stuff coming out. So they were like, let's put some old stuff back in theaters. I know, like around Halloween time, they showed Hocus Pocus in theaters, and so they put Avatar back in theaters, and it made enough money on its re-release, because technically it still counts toward the movie, to gross more money than Avengers. So now the interesting part is, if Marvel ever decides, hey, why don't we put Avengers Endgame back in theaters, Avengers Endgame could then overlap Avatar again. And then when Avatar 2 comes out, if they decide, let's put Avatar 1 back in theaters in a special IMAX release, that could pass it too. So I think we're going to see these two movies continue to outgross each other for like the next 10 years. I swear to God. And there might be a bigger movie that will come down the line and crush them both. But if Star Wars couldn't do it, and if all the other Marvel movies couldn't do it, I really doubt anything will top those, at least anytime soon. But that is your news for the box office. What do you think about that, Kels?
Wow. Well, they just made enough. They made money that just added to how much they made the first time.
Yes. So it added on to their total. So it's a recurring total. So like when they brought the Star Wars prequels, I think they showed Phantom Menace again in theaters for like the 10-year anniversary around like 2009 or something. Don't quote me on that. I don't know what year it was. That gross, the money that it made, counted towards the original Phantom Menace release box office. So it's if they show an old movie, a classic like Wizard of Oz in theaters, that technically goes to the Wizard of Oz's initial gross. So it's really interesting to see how box office money can still pile up years and years and years later,
Yeah, I don't know. It's Disney competing against Disney, so I'm not that
right.
invested. But
They
I
still
did
win at the end of the day.
Knowing and I did enjoy the fact that Endgame was the highest grossing for at least, what is it, at a year, 2 years? 2
Yeah,
years
about a
since
year,
Endgame's release?
almost 2 years. We are almost at the 2 year, and can you believe it? In a month, we will be the 2 years away from the release of Avengers Endgame. That is crazy.
April 26th.
You remember the date on the dot?
Yeah, because Taylor Swift also released something on April 26th. So
Gotcha.
it
What
was
did she
ingrained.
release?
I think maybe she told us. No, remember because we were at your apartment in New York before the premiere and I was
Right,
watching that thing to see what Taylor Swift was going to say and she was dropping her next single for the next album, which
which
was
was Lover.
yeah, for she was announcing that she was dropping Me. So,
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. So
yeah,
2 years later,
it was a memorable day for me to say the
two
least.
years later, if you had told me 2 years ago that A, we would be seeing the highest grossing movie of all time, I would have believed you. But that B, it would be dethroned 2 years later by a movie that came out 10 years earlier. And
Yeah.
then you told me that, we'd be in a pandemic and we'd be podcasting from our homes on a computer about Marvel. I wouldn't believe you. But crazier things have happened. So Kelsey, what is your news of the week?
My news is that the episode on WandaVision, the episode of Assembled, the docu-series that Disney Plus is dropping to take us behind the scenes of all things Marvel, dropped their episode on WandaVision. So I got to watch that
Mm-hmm.
the other day. I think it was released on Friday. I feel like
Yes.
that.
Yeah, because they didn't have a show to drop on Friday, so they were like, "Hey, let's drop our little making of documentary." And I watched this too. I thought it was pretty nice. It was pretty cool. Kelsey,
Yeah,
what were like your biggest takeaways from it?
honestly, I gotta say, my biggest takeaway: Blue Vision. That was
Yes.
terrifying. I
So why don't you tell the listeners what Blue Vision is?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll never believe this, folks, but Vision, most of the time when we saw Vision in his non-human form, in his s- um, what's that word I'm looking for? His
uh,
not
s- ro-
android,
robotic. I don't know.
symbiote,
His
symbiote.
natural form. His natural form.
His robotic form, his when he's red Vision. It's CGI, the kind of hat helmet thing that he has going on his
Hmm.
head. I always thought that it was, makeup and like a cap that he wore,
No,
almost
yeah, it's just his
like a
face.
swimmer's
Yeah.
cap. But
Hmm.
no, they for the black and white sequences of episode 1 and 2, they painted his face blue to look right underneath with the black and white filter on, and they totally just CGI his ears out of it and the cap and the mind stone on his forehead.
Right.
And I was like blown away. I was like, this is first of all the most terrifying thing I've ever seen because it's just Paul Bettany with a blue face and like
uh,
two ears sticking out.
mhm.
And also the most interesting thing I've ever seen because man, movie magic. The way the honestly the most entertaining part of the thing, as much as I love hearing actors talk about like the process and all that stuff, and I love Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen. I thought they did a fantastic job in WandaVision. The most like intriguing part of all of it for me was at the very tail end. It was like the last 20 minutes they gave the editors, like the last 20 minutes, talking about how they CGI'd his face and how they came up
Mhm.
with the hex, and yeah, talking about how they CGI'd all the powers. Like, uh, editors, like, wow, like
Yeah.
what smart, interesting, creative people they are. I'm just blown away every time.
Mhm.
And then they were showing how they were putting all the food on wires and all the stuff from episodes 1 and 2. They were like, stringing up everything and like puppeteering
Yeah.
all
So
the
all that was
plastic
practical,
hands.
which is
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
So, like I said in the beginning, when I first started watching WandaVision, I was, blown away by the special effects and everything. But to get a nice, good chunk and segment about how it was done and what the thought process behind all the stuff was very, very cool to me.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
And I will admit, like last episode, I did say the special effects weren't too impressive, and I was talking about like the big energy balls. I just think that's something we've seen in so many superhero movies that it's not as particularly interesting. But looking at the really, really special effects, like the character work, like how they make Vision look like Vision,
Mm,
I think that's the most impressive stuff that Marvel does. If you look at Thanos, a lot of the villains ranking, spoiler alert, is based on, a style, and part of that style is the visual and how they were able to pull off the actual visual of that character. And I think Thanos too had such a cool CGI. The way they made Josh Brolin look like Thanos, the way they make Mark Ruffalo and Hulk come together as Professor Hulk and have him basically doing all the motions as Mark Ruffalo, like, it's really, really impressive to see what they do in CGI for the characters. I wish they went a little more. I wish they were a little more creative with like the actual like big explosions and magic energy, whatever. But that's just me. But that is really impressive, and it honestly relates to the Avatar thing because he looked like one of the Na'vi with the blue and the little ears. I was like, he looks like he's in Avatar. So that's a great little full circle segue there.
No, yeah, that was honestly the coolest part for me. I wish they gave more time to the editors, because I was like, wow,
Right.
these are the unsung heroes really of the Marvel, of the
Right.
whole MCU, because they make
Exactly.
the magic happen, really.
Visual effects and editing is, where the magic happens. The director has the vision, but if no pun intended, but if the vision can't, translate to the screen, the point A and point C, there's a lot of point B to get from point A to point C. So, you got to climb the mountain to get to the other side, and that mountain is the editing.
And I would just like to point out the fact that there was way more females involved in the creative side of WandaVision than I realized, and that just made my heart so happy. I was like,
Agreed.
yes, female producers and visual
Mm-hmm.
directors, and I was so glad I watched the episode,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is exactly what I was talking about in my Captain Marvel video. This is exactly where the direction that we should be moving in, and I was very, very happy.
Yeah. So, yeah, perfect way to end that off. Go watch it if you haven't seen it, everyone. It's really interesting. It's only an hour. I think it's like 57 minutes, and Marvel, the credits take up a good few minutes of that. So, yeah, go watch it. It's really interesting, especially if you liked WandaVision. You will love that. Okay, so villains ranking. Here's how we're gonna do it. I have my pen ready because we're gonna be doing a lot of writing. Because, I may have some last minute like blurbs that I want to write down because there's so much to talk about with all these villains. We went with 30 villains. We took 30 villains and we decided to rank them on a rubric. Kelsey will tell us about the rubric in 1 second, but I just wanted to say before we get to the villains that we did rank, I do want to pour one out for the villains that we did not include, including 2 villains that are villains, but now we know them more as heroes. Even Loki is still kind of up to some mischief in his new series, so he's still a villain. But we wanted to, first of all, shout out Nebula and the Winter Soldier, aka Bucky, because Nebula obviously is a villain of Guardians 1. She is a villain, half of a villain in Endgame. But there is a part of her who's also a hero in Endgame, and she's a hero in Guardians 2. And Infinity War, she's also a hero. So we thought if they're more heroic than they are villainous in the overall MCU, we're going to keep them off the list. Same with Bucky. He's villainous in Winter Soldier, but otherwise, and some flashbacks of Civil War, but otherwise he is Bucky. Everyone loves Bucky. He's a hero. I don't think he deserves to be on a villains ranking. We could rank him, but I think if we're looking at a more permanent like collection of villains for the first 3 phases, I don't consider him a villain. I consider him an anti-hero or a hero in the grand scheme. And then I'll let you give your thoughts on those 2, but let me just rattle off the 4 names of the 4 that we also had to make a tough cut to, just because, 34 names just didn't seem right. 30 seemed good. We left off 2 villains from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We left off the very infamous Taserface, and we left off the Sovereign as a whole, because the Sovereign is one group. They're not really a single villain. We do have one group on this actual list, but that is a very, very purposeful and needed group to rank. But the Sovereign we left off. We also put Dr. Zola on the side list because he is usually the second in command to someone higher than him, whether it be Red Skull or Alexander Pierce. So he is not up there. And then the Grandmaster in Thor Ragnarok. Yes, he has, his champions, and he has all the, brutal fighting between them, like the gladiator style fighting. And he has, some villainous tendencies, but in the end, he's more of a comedic relief. And there are bigger villains in that particular movie, particularly Hela, and some could even say Loki to an extent, even though he's more of not a hero, but he's on the hero side in that movie. But we left him off as well. So Kelsey, give us just your little homage to Nebula and Winter Soldier because I know it was a tough cut.
Right. Yeah, we talked about we kind of went back and forth with them a little bit, but ultimately I thought that they have a full, I feel like, character arc. They have a redemption and
Hmm.
they uh they grow, which so I didn't think that it was very fair to just throw them in a list of people with some of the names being like Malekith and Cassilius and whatever whichever name that is that's supposed to get like the lisp. I don't know. And like, Sunny
What?
Birch and all these different
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
you know what I'm saying? You always say it funny.
We'll get there when we get there because I don't
Oh,
know if I'm right with that.
I just didn't think it that I think that they deserve more to just be thrown in with this group of people. So
Yep.
maybe they'll be in a heroes ranking. Maybe. Stay tuned.
Yeah. We will probably do a heroes ranking at some point, but there are way more heroes and it's way harder, I think, to rank. Give me one sec. Something just popped up on my computer. Ugh. Okay, whatever. Sorry. So here's how it's going to work. We are going to start off. Actually, Kelsey, why don't you tell us the rubric first before we
Sure.
get into the actual ranking? Why don't you tell us how we went about making our lists in the first place? Because we can't just rank them. Because ranking them just on their own is hard because you have to factor in so many things. So, Kelsey, what were the 5 things we used to factor in with these villain rankings?
So the 5 different categories we used that we gave a score out of 1 to 5, 1 being the least, 5 being the most, was performance, the performance by the
Oh,
actor.
I went all the way to decimals, like point
Oh,
1 for
oh,
some.
I did decimals too.
Okay, but I mean like lower than 1. Like I gave someone a point 2 for relevance. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay, fair, fair, love it. I
So we
honestly
ranked them from
probably
point 1 to 5.0, basically.
Okay. So I
No
probably
zeros.
honestly I probably should have done that because I had a lot of people like come out to be like 11 and then I had to like rank the 11s within like the ranking. Anyway,
Right.
next category, relevance, how impactful they are to the rest of the MCU. Their backstory, if their motive for being a villain, how they came about being in an antagonist in someone's story, the style, not just how they look, but their fighting style and um things like that. And last but not least, fear factor. How simply just how scary, how terrifying, how villainous they are.
How
As well.
powerful too. Like yeah, like if you were to come across this villain in the alleyway, who would you most like to see and who would you least like to see?
Yep.
Because there was one that I'd be like, if I saw him in the alleyway, I'd be like, "What's up, Sonny?" But then there are some, spoiler alert, where I'd be
Yes.
like, "Yep, just snap me away. I'm done. I've come to I'm not even here to bargain. I'm done." So yeah, 5 totally different things. So one character may be really really awesome in their style but not really important to the whole MCU. Some might be super powerful and scary but might have some ugly style to them, like it might be just a weird, like you don't remember them. Some people are super relevant but they're just men in suits, so like for style it's like you can't really give them much credit for style there. So it's really all over the place, but it was a good way to like kind of get a consensus rather than just rank them in one area or another. And I think performance is the big one for me that really factored in because I think the performance really brings those villains to life. Here's how we're going to do it. We have 30 villains. And if so we've broken it up into three thirds: top 10, middle 10, bottom 10. So we're going to go back and forth one at a time saying who our villain is. We'll start with number 30. If Kelsey has that villain in her top 20 or top 10, she will say, save it for later, Dill. And we will talk about that villain when they are on her list later on. If they are within the bottom 10, so for example, say we had Nebula on this list and Nebula was my 30 and her 25, we'd talk about it then. If it was her 11, we'd save it for later. And we'll basically do that for every stage, just so we can really give the villain their spotlight when they are higher on one of our lists. So, Kelsey, are you ready to give
I'm
us?
ready.
Should I start or do you want to start? Because I think you might have hotter, spicier takes. So I might want to start this.
Okay, you can start us off, Dill.
Okay. So my number 30 it's just it gets me giddy because like this is a character no one talks about and for a good reason. I have Malekith from Thor the Dark World. Kelsey, is that in your bottom 10?
It is. Malekith is my number 25.
Okay, 25. Okay, wow. So okay, so I'm just gonna so you'll see my pen writing because at the end we're gonna add these up and see what the actual order is gonna be. So let's talk about Malekith now. Kelsey, give me your spiel on Malekith.
Listen, so in order to get my thoughts really together here, I was kind of able to place all of the villains basically in 5 categories. I believe there are 5 categories that all of the MCU villains fall under. And for Malekith, he really fell under the category of just being plain evil. And honestly, like that category to me, so I'll tell you what my categories are. They're just plain evil, the revenge plot, I want money or power. I'm kind of just doing what I'm told. I want something. I miscellaneous. Wait, do I know how to count? Hold on. Just plain evil, revenge plot, money and power. Kind of just doing what I'm told. I guess it's 6 categories. Did I
All
say
right,
5?
miscellaneous. You said
Miscel-
5. So we're at 6.
okay, miscellaneous and the complicated villain, which is it's the best kind of villain. So Malekith really fell under the category of just plain evil. And to me, that category is almost a little bit more interesting than the revenge plot or the money or power plot because I feel like we've kind of see that get a little too overplayed throughout the MCU. I mean, look at all of Iron Man's villains. They're all because, like, you didn't use my idea from 20 years ago, or
Right.
I worked with your dad, and it's like all like, you know, things that we've seen time and time again to the point where I kind of it's almost a little bit refreshing to just see someone who is just like I want to plunge the universe in total darkness. No rhyme or reason. I just want to do it because I can.
Mhm. So my thoughts on Malekith, I think
Wait, Dill,
because
pause. I'm sorry. Time out before you start talking about Malekith. My dog's barking. I don't know if you can
oh,
hear.
I hear him. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna deal with that for a
Yeah,
second.
go deal with that. I will talk about Malekith because he is so forgettable. I don't think Kelsey's gonna miss much if she doesn't hear what I have to say. Malekith for me, it's just one of those villains that like if you were to go through every single Marvel movie and tell me, hey, say the name of the villain, I'd probably be able to give you the name of the villain, save for 3 movies. And 3 of those movies, you'll see my bottom 3 are those 3 villains that I think in that movie there are stronger villains. And again, I don't think Loki is the main villain of the Dark World, but I think because he's just such a memorable presence and because he does do some mischievous stuff and he is locked up for a long period of that because he was a villain in the first one, I think Loki is the villain of Thor the Dark World. You know, like if someone were to say who's the villain of Thor the Dark World, I'd say Loki. I would not say Malekith because Malekith to me is just so forgettable, and I just don't have any reason to put him higher than a 1 on any of this stuff. His style is the thing I'm most impressed by because he at least looks semi cool, but I don't think the performance is anything special. I don't think he's relevant in any of the MCU, even in this movie. I don't think he's relevant. I think if you have any other villain there, the same stuff happens. I don't think it had to be Malekith. And I just think the backstory, like, I don't know anything about Malekith's story and his like whole, life, like I just don't care and I don't really need to care. So that's why I put Malekith at the bottom. I don't think I want to waste more time on him. But Kelsey, why don't you tell us what your number 30 is?
My number 30 is Abomination from The Incredible Hulk.
That is my number 23. So we will talk about him now. Give me a second. All right, go ahead, Kelsey. Tell me about Abomination.
Well, honestly, it's kind of unjustified. It's mainly because I didn't enjoy that movie just like as a whole.
Hmm.
And, he falls into the category for me of just kind of being someone who's just doing what he's told. I mean,
Hmm.
what really saves it for him is like he really got a high score in Fear Factor. I mean, he looks terrifying. And
Yeah.
watched it and I was like, they at least give Hulk trousers Abomination, no pants. No pants. This guy is
Yeah.
wearing his birthday suit whenever he transforms into like the Abomination, and I was kind of confused because it made me think about like what that anatomy would be like, but then I was like, don't why go
Right.
there with your
Yeah.
thoughts? Um
Mhm.
but he's at the bottom for me just because I mean it's really more because I just didn't like the movie as a whole, and
Yeah.
I didn't think that he was interesting. I didn't really get enough of his backstory. Everything that you were saying about Malekith about being forgettable, that was me with this guy. I don't even know his
Interesting.
real name.
Emil Blonsky. It's on the screen right
Yeah,
down
oh,
there.
I see it now. I'm sorry.
It's in front of your eyes and you still don't remember his name. The thing is, I think the fight itself is the highlight of that movie for me, and I think part of it is because he is like kind of scary. Like I do think I think it's a cool design. Given the time, the effects don't look amazing after a while, but I do think he's at least somewhat interesting to look at and to see him fight. So I would say he is not in my bottom 5, but he is in my bottom 10. He's my 23 because I think he is honestly a better villain in that movie than someone else we'll talk about soon. But um, yeah, I dig that fight. So I think that's what
Okay.
put him a little bit higher. So the fear factor and I think the style went up a little bit, but the backstory, the relevance, it's not really there. And I think Tim Roth is great as Emil Blonsky for a little while, but then he kind of like does some weird stuff, makes some weird choices. So and Tim Roth is one of my favorite actors. So it's not my favorite Tim Roth performance, so I can see why it's lower on my list. So my number 29, and I hope you have him in your bottom 10. I teased it earlier. The most Malekith is irrelevant, but at least like Malekith is the bottom for me, just because he's purely forgettable. But this guy is memorable for all the wrong reasons, and it's because he's useless. And that is Sonny Birch from
He's my
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
29.
Okay, perfect. I am so glad we agree on Sonny Birch. So let me put that there. So 29, honestly, looking at this, Sonny Birch will be our number 30 when we go back and look at the combined scores. So Sonny Birch is our worst villain combined. And I think it's because he is not only not the main villain of that movie, but he is just useless. You take him out of the movie, it's the same exact movie to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like
The
I
only
think
purpose that he serves is that he's been like the parts dealer for Hope and Hank to rebuild their laboratory, and his whole motivation is just like money. Like I don't even know what it is. Like is it even money? Does
right.
he want to get rich off of whatever they're building, or I don't even know. Or
Yeah,
is it like he's going to turn them in and make money that way somehow? Like it's yeah, I agree with you. Like he's
yeah.
useless.
Yeah, here's the thing. I've seen the movie once. I saw the movie once with you and our buddy Landon, but a month later, if you had said Sonny Birch, what do you think of him? I wouldn't have remembered him. So I had to go back and watch this movie again a few days ago so I could remember who it is. And honestly, I liked the movie a lot more than I remember I did. Like I really enjoyed it this time around. I thought it was actually pretty solid. I think it's better than the first one. But he was still forgettable,
Yeah.
like I just didn't. Walton Goggins is such a good actor, but I don't know what he's doing in this role. He's in the wrong movie. I think he's like playing some other character in some other movie. I was not a fan. So that is your 29 as well. So I guess I'm next again with number 28, and I put so as I said while you were gone, I said the bottom 3 here are all the villains that are. If you were to tell me the name of the movie and I could tell you the name of the villain in the movie, these would not be the first names I'd think of, even though they are technically the main villains of those movies. So this is a name that I could not remember until we were putting this list together, and I was like, oh yeah, that is the main villain of Thor, even though like even though like everyone says Loki first, and the thing is Loki is a villain, but Loki at least has an arc where you're supposed to kind of look at him as this like more of an anti-hero. Like he is a villain, but he is really the villain of Avengers, whereas in Thor he's more of the antagonist, but he's not the main villain, and that main villain is Laufey. And Laufey, I don't remember him at all. Where's Laufey on your list, by the way? Sorry, I jumped the gun.
Laufey's my number 22.
Oh my.
Okay. He's in the bottom.
All right, so he's in our bottom 10, so we're going to talk about him now. But, like, why so high, Kelsey? Because let me just finish my spiel real quick. I think he's just utterly forgettable. I think like that movie, everyone thinks of Loki as the villain. I don't think that was the intention to make Loki the main villain, but I think they were setting him up to be a villain in Avengers. But because he was such a better, just a better performance, a better character, everyone left that movie saying Loki was such a good villain, and everyone's like, oh shit, what about Laufey? Like that was our main villain, and he's just useless. He's this frost giant. Like that's all I remember about him. And like I wanted to go back and watch all these clips, and I went back and watched all the clips. And when I sat down, I was like, did I watch that clip? I watched that clip twice, but I forgot because I don't know who the fuck Laufey is. So Kelsey, tell me about Laufey and why he's not so high, but much higher on your list.
Listen, I think that Laufey. Okay, the reason why I kind of have Malekith and Laufey a little bit higher than you would prefer, Dill, is because they hold a little bit more relevance than I think you realize because they introduce two of the Infinity Stones to us. Malekith's whole motivation is to use the Reality Stone, the Ether, to plunge the universe into darkness. Laufey was like the owner of the Tesseract until Odin's father took it from him, and now he just wants it back. And I kind of watched this movie, and you kind of realize that like there really wouldn't have been a movie if Thor didn't just go looking for a fight to begin with. Like Thor goes and messes with him, and that's when Laufey is like, I'm sorry, your son came onto my planet and just started killing people. So, maybe don't try to start a war with us after we have like a peace treaty and everything.
Right.
I mean, saying that he's my number 22, I understand sounds a little bit more ridiculous. I'm looking at my list now, and I think that the person that's directly under him I probably could have swapped them, but I'm sticking by my ranking.
That's fine. No, stick by your ranking because also we watched these movies at different times in different contexts. Like, he might be a better villain when you just leave that movie, but in the context of the whole MCU, he was probably, I think, in terms of relevance, he was exactly where he is on my list. He was number 28 for me on relevance. He was just so low. The only place he ranked a little bit higher on was style, because I think he's well made. I think the makeup is cool, and I think it's much more interesting than whatever they were doing with fucking Malekith. But yeah, I couldn't put him higher. So now we're at your 27, Kels. Or sorry, your 28. What is your 28?
My 28 is Helmut Zemo from Civil War, Captain America's Civil War.
Oh, that is a save it for later. That is, we're saving that. We're saving that for so late. We're saving that for later.
Okay.
We'll get there. Okay, my 27 is Ivan Vanko / Whiplash.
1 second, Dill. Mother, I texted you not to bother me.
We'll let Kelsey deal with that. She's off the stream for now. Kelsey, just give me a wave when you're ready. We film these at different times of the days, depending on the Sunday we're recording it, and some things happen. Kelsey, are you ready? Thumbs up. Are you good?
This is what happens when you move back home from college and you have no other choice and no money to live anywhere else except for home.
It happens. Hey, listen, we are going to keep plowing on, keep ranking these villains. We're already a half hour in, but, people settle in because I feel like it's going to be a long night. But, set back, put your speed on your YouTube video up to like 1.5 instead of 1. Get it a little quicker than we will. But, just sit back, relax, enjoy the show. My 27 is Whiplash, Mr. Mickey Rourke, Whiplash.
Save it for later.
Oh my God, really?
Yes.
Wait, like Whiplash?
Yes.
Okay. No judgment. What is your 27, Kelsey?
My 27 is General Ross.
Okay, that is my 26. So perfect timing.
Oh.
We're
back on the same page again.
I think relevance is where he is the highest because he is in a lot of other movies. But I think as a villain, he's menacing only in that first movie. He's not the villain of any of the others. He's just kind of like doing his job, I guess. But because the first movie, he's very clearly directly going after the Hulk. He is a villain, I guess. But he is, I think, even less of a villain than Abomination is in that movie. I think it's almost like a Hayward thing where it's like, yeah, he's doing his job. And I guess his intentions are kind of bad and like he's kind of a dick. Not as much as Hayward in WandaVision, but I don't think he's enough to put it any higher than 26 for me. The thing that does put him above the other four I have in my bottom four is relevance, just in the overall MCU, and that's what put him there. Because style, I mean, there's nothing for style, and backstory. I think you have that moment, the stuff with his daughter, which is important, and he's not really high on fear factor. So I think it's really just relevance that's putting him above those others. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, for me, like I can understand what he wants, which is
Yeah.
basically either no superheroes or like a very controlled superhero group, something that
Hmm.
he can have a say in and monopolize and everything. I'll agree with you. He was the most interesting and entertaining in The Incredible Hulk, and you know, but yeah, he's just on the bottom for me because
Well, actually, I had Abomination higher, but like I was just saying, he is not the primary villain in Incredible Hulk, but
oh,
to you he is. But that's fine. I
well,
think
you
I think
said
the
that
daughter
like he was
was
like more menacing, like in that one.
in relation to his other MCU movies.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying as well. I'm agreeing with
Oh,
you.
okay. I thought you meant in comparison to Abomination.
Oh,
Gotcha.
no. I'm just saying in
Oh, okay.
comparison to his other stuff. Like when we see him in
Right.
Civil War, he's just kind of there to just, give
Hmm.
them the Sokovia Accords and
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah. He's not being a villain in that sense. He's just kind of giving it to them. It's their choice. So
Don't shoot, I'm just the messenger.
right. Ha. Ralph Boner. There he is. Okay. What is your number 26?
My number 26 is Dormammu.
We are saving him for later.
Okay. You got it.
Hmm. I sense the enthusiasm in your voice. All right, my 25 is Justin Hammer from Iron Man 2.
Save him for later.
Wow, okay. All righty. Save him for later. Okay, who is your 25?
Malekith.
All right, great. We're at my 24. You're flying through this. Number 24 for me is Cassilius from Doctor Strange.
He's my number 21.
Okay, cool. So we're talking about him now. Tell us about Cassilius.
Listen, I went into Doctor Strange uh thinking that Cassilius was gonna be like so boring and like because I didn't really remember him the first time. Literally, when you said his name, you said like, "Oh, Cassilius," and I was like, "Yeah, of course, duh." And I really didn't know who you were talking about, so I rewatched Doctor Strange just for his performance. And honestly, like I was blown away. Like for what I was expecting, I was blown away
Right, because he's
because
still in your bottom 10, but he's the highest
yeah,
of your bottom 10. Yeah.
no, for sure. Because I feel like him and Dormammu kind of work like together in a sense where like Dormammu is like the Thanos and he's like the Black Order, like the children of Thanos kind of
Right.
thing, where he's just kind of doing Dormammu's bidding. But the whole monologue that he has, I'm forgetting the actor's name. Do you have it in front of
Mads
you?
Mikkelsen. Mads Mikkelsen.
So I think that he does a fantastic job in this
He is great.
role.
Yes,
I
I,
think
I
that
have him high on performance. Yeah,
yeah,
he's really
because
good.
the entire monologue he has about what he kind of envisions for the future and how he thinks that time is really the enemy for people and how, they can live in this utopia. I don't know if you can see it because of all the makeup he has around his eyes, but he's crying throughout that entire monologue. Like he is giving the performance of his life. You
Yeah,
can see the tears streaming down his face. I was just like, wow, this guy
yeah.
is committing to being
I
Cassilius right
I'm gonna
now.
say right now, the Oscar nominations already came out while we're speaking, so I don't know if this happened or not. But he is in another movie. It's a Danish movie called Another Round. I highly recommend that movie because he is awesome in it, and I want him to get an Oscar nomination for it. I don't think he will, but if he does get an Oscar nomination, it's already happened after we're recording this, but before you're seeing this. So I hope he got in. If he did get a nomination, I get it, but he's a really good actor. The problem is what you said. The eyes. I think part of the reason I have him so low is because of the style. I don't like.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's an interesting stylistic choice for
Sure.
Malekith. Or so for Cassilius. Sorry, I'm still on
I
Malekith.
know,
So maybe
sorry.
I do
I
remember.
flip-flopped them earlier, so I understand.
It's because of this complicated name. But
Yeah.
Cassilius, like I think he's a interesting villain. I think because Dormammu's kind of pulling the strings, Cassilius is more of that puppet than that
Mhm.
higher power, which is kind of a tank on his relevance to me.
Mhm.
But I do think he is a better villain than some people give it credit for. He's only my 24, but I think he's leagues above my bottom 5. So it's just the way the rubric went out. He ended up at 24. I'm honestly surprised with how low he ended up for me. But that's what happens. That's how the cookie crumbles. Who is your number 24, Kels?
My number 24 is Darren Cross from
Okay,
Ant-Man.
that is my number 22. So we're pretty close.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think he's fine for the movie he's in, but I think overall, in comparison to all the other villains, that whole movie itself just feels so small. And I get it; it's Ant
No
Man;
pun
it's supposed to be
intended.
small, but even Ant Man and the Wasp, like they went on a grander scale with it, and they brought in a lot more elements to make it feel more gravitas. Whereas this, it's like he's a interesting villain, like when he like zaps things and they like shrink and explode or whatever. Like I think that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but like to me, it just the stakes of that battle itself, while really cool with like the Thomas the Tank Engine and all that stuff, it's all cool. I don't think it's necessarily a lot of fear factor. I just don't think he's as scary. I don't think he's as memorable. I don't really love the performance from Corey Stoll, so that's why I have it lower at number 22 for me. So Kelsey, tell us why it's your number 24.
So he's my number 4 because I feel like it was the same thing that I was going back to my categories. You know, he easily falls into the category of the revenge plot. He's clearly upset that, you know, Hank Pym kind of took him under his wing to just, you know, not pick him to, you know, be the next Ant-Man, be the next superhero, kind of carry on this legacy of Pym
Right.
technology. So, you know, here he is getting his big old revenge, coming out with this yellow jacket suit, and it's like after we had seen all 3 of the Iron Man movies and even some villains after the Iron Man movies, I felt like this plot was just this type of character and this villain was just very played out. You know, I was kind of
Yeah,
over this story at this point, and as far as those types of villains go, he's really the least interesting, I gotta say. I mean, like, I
fair.
have others down the line that are much higher for better reasons. You know, I don't think that he like really fights well. He doesn't really do anything impressive when he actually has the suit on. You know, it's all of the suit doing the work for him essentially. Um I think his performance, the actor's performance is like, you know, average. It held my
Right.
attention, I guess. But, you know, I felt like Ant-Man should have been the opportunity for them to take a different direction with an origin story. I think it's going back to your problem that you have with origin stories, and I can totally understand where you're coming from because, you know, by the time we got Ant-Man, it was just feeling a little bit repetitive. So that's why
I agree.
he's at the lower tier for me.
Great, man. He was your number 24, right?
Yeah.
All right, so 23, I had Abomination. What is your 23?
My 23 is Ulysses Claw. Ulysses Claw. However you pronounce that.
Save him for later.
Okay?
23, you said?
Yeah, 23.
All right, my 22 was Darren Cross. So what is your 22?
Laufey.
Laffy. Okay, cool. Laffy. I don't know.
Laufey,
Laffy
sorry.
Taffy. Laffy Taffy. Who knows? Whoops, sorry. I was just charging an AirPod while you were talking. Okay. My number. So we're at 21, right?
Yeah.
All right. So your 21 was already said, right? It was Cassilius.
Cassilius.
All
Mm-hmm.
right. So my 21 is Aldrich Killian.
So now are we in from 21 to 11?
Well, I guess we're saving him for later because he's not your 21, so he's higher up. All right,
He's higher up.
so yeah, so 3 of my villains we're saving for later. 3 of her villains we're saving for later. So now we are officially in the top 20. Kelsey, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great, Jill.
All right, so why don't I kick it off with number 20? And this honestly surprised me. This was more of after I ranked it and I saw what I put, I was like, wait, is this serious? At number 20, I have the Children of Thanos.
Oh, interesting. I mean, we're going to have to save them for later.
All right, so here's the thing: if they're in your top 10, we're saving it for later. They're in your top 10.
Yeah.
All right. The thing is, I am totally fine with that. We'll talk about it when we get there. I'll tell you why they ended up so low.
Okay.
All right. What is your number 20?
My number 20 is Brock Rumlow from
Okay,
Captain America
interesting.
and the Winter Soldier.
That's my number 18.
Okay.
Yeah, I was surprised he made it this high, honestly, because
Yeah,
he's in so little,
yeah.
but I think his presence in those smaller bits is really, you recognize him when they bring him back in Endgame. You're like, oh, that's Crossbones, and I think he has one of the most awesome deaths of any MCU villain.
Oh,
Uh,
getting
I mean,
thrown
that's
into a
Scarlet Witch.
building
Yeah, just
by
just throwing him through the
yeah.
building.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
he's definitely
tell me about Brock. Yeah.
so he falls into the category for me of just doing what I'm told. He's kind of what I think he's like the muscle basically
Hmm.
behind Alexander Pierce's whole Hydra operation going
Right.
on. So he really got, for higher, more higher. That's not correct
He
English.
got higher up,
He got higher
higher.
up compared to the others that I had just because of his fear factor. He's definitely someone that I would not want to encounter in a dark alley. Like
Right.
could kill me in one punch, I believe.
Hmm.
Um so yeah, that's why he's here. And I enjoy his performance.
Yeah, I think he's good. I think he's got like this cool villainy. I think like it's kind of cool, like
Yeah,
watching
it's
him,
kind of
kick the
sexy and
crap out of people.
dangerous.
Sure. Yeah. So I think he's definitely for style, he's pretty far up there too. All right, my number 19. I'm wondering if this will be in your top 10. Ronan the Accuser.
No, he's my number 18.
Oh, okay. So we're like right on the money there. So tell me, Kelsey, about Ronan the Accuser from your favorite movie of the MCU, Guardians of the Galaxy.
It is my favorite, you're right.
Mhm.
Sorry, I just get excited when I think about it. So Ronan also falls under the category of just kind of doing what I'm told. In other words, I kind of just wrote down while I was, going through all of their motives. I wanted to make sure I knew what they wanted as the movie progressed. I wanted to make sure that they had a clear objective that I could pick out. And next to his name, I just kind of wrote Thanos's bitch question mark. He's really just
Yeah.
doing everything that he's doing to just like please daddy Thanos. So that kind of gave him like kind of put him further
Oh,
down for me than
uh-huh.
other people. I do think that he's scary. I think that Lee Pace does a great job with Ronan, especially later on. I love his little cameo in
Captain
uh
Marvel.
Captain Marvel, exactly, where
Yeah.
he just says, "Get me the weapon," and he goes, "Oh, like that thing or whatever," and he goes, "No, the woman." Like I think I just that really like
Yeah.
did it for me. I
Yeah.
really like that moment a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, I think he's honestly, I think he's a little lower for me because of his style. I don't love the style of Ronan. I
Yeah,
think some people really dig it, but I just something about him and both him and Cassilius with the eyes. It's like it's not my favorite of the villain style, but I do have him, fairly average everywhere. I had gave him like kind of almost threes across the board for everything because I think he's just like your average villain. I don't think there's a ton wrong with him. He's not the most memorable, but he's also not the least. He's powerful for sure, but he's also not the most powerful.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Ronan's good. Who was your number 19?
Alexander Pierce.
All right, that is my number 16. So I had it higher than you, and I honestly thought this was going to be a lot higher on my list because he is kind of like the introduction of Hydra within Shield. But there are things that bring him down. His style, I mean, he's just a man in a suit.
Yeah.
His overall relevance after that movie kind of just ends there. So tell us about Alexander Pierce.
Yeah, I put him just above Brock Rumlow just because I think that his he's higher than him when it comes to relevance. I mean, I know it's not I feel like, being the person who kind of took down Shield is a little bit relevant who's not I don't want to say single-handedly because he surely wasn't single-handedly when he did it, but like he
Right.
infiltrated Shield and was totally operating an entire like section of Hydra without anyone really noticing until this until Captain America Winter Soldier. So I thought that that
Right.
was kind of impressive. It's clear what he wants. It's just complete and utter control. Similar to he gives me a lot of like Illuminati, like New World vibes.
Mm,
But I agree with you. He's really just like a man in a suit calling the shots. Um, so he definitely wasn't going like anywhere near my top 10, but it was the
cool.
relevance really that
Yeah.
saved it for me.
It's interesting because his relevance for me was low just because I think, you know, um, Hydra. Oh, sorry, was it something I said?
No, 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 I accidentally hit my microphone. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I
I
was
didn't
like, I'm
mean to.
allowed to have an opinion,
Oh,
Kelsey.
no, no, no. Please, please. I'd love to hear it.
No, I mean, I actually did have relevance higher. I meant backstory because I think we get
Oh,
a lot of
okay.
like he is so influential, but at the same time, it's like I don't know a ton about him. I guess because he is kind of has a lot of little puppets. He's almost a puppet master, and sometimes the
Right.
puppet master, like Thanos, we get a lot of him, but sometimes the puppet master is almost too hidden. Kind of like what I assume you'll talk about later with like Dormammu, where you don't get to know him enough. So even though he is the head honcho, um, I just want a little bit more. I think style is really what brought him down for me. Otherwise, I think he would have ranked a lot higher for me. But what is your number 18? My 18 was Crossbones.
My 18 was Ronan.
Okay, cool. So we're moving on to 17. And I'm surprised. I will tell you right now, I'm surprised neither of us have mentioned this person because I was worried you would have him so low because you know I love him. You know I love him. And a lot of people know I love him. Do we have the same 17?
Who is it?
Is it Trevor Slattery?
No.
Oh,
I have, I
okay.
have to talk about him later.
I'm so happy. Honestly, honestly, I was so worried that like because every list they're like Trevor number 30, and I was trying my best to like bring him down a little, but he ended up at 17. So we're talking about him later.
Yeah, we're talking about him later. I have lots to say about Trevor Slattery, Dill.
Okay. I love this so much. Okay, what is your 17?
My 17 is Yanrog.
Oh, okay. He's my number 13. I was like, did we not mention him? He is someone I did not expect to be as high as he was on my list.
Wait, what
But
number is he for you?
13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know, right? He's way higher than I expect. I did not expect him to crack my top 15, let
Sure.
alone 13. So, tell me about Jan since you just watched Captain Marvel again for your video.
Oh, once again, just another guy who's just doing what he's told, you know? It's like Daddy Thanos at the top, Ronan the Accuser, and then Yanrog, like the Kree general or whatever his
Right.
military status is. Um I liked that he was good at being a villain for some strange reason. That sounds correct. I don't know why I hesitated so much getting out that sentence. But you know, I think that there's other people that are more interesting than him, and I like that Captain Marvel, you know, I like that he was the thing that was kind of holding Captain Marvel back the entire time, and he was the obstacle that she had to get over, and I think that Jude Law did a good job in that role.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at his scores now that I put for my rubric, and they're all again like 3.5 was almost across the board, and then 3 point I put even higher for his performance. I think he is a really solid performer. I think it's one of those fake outs. A lot of the time you'll have villains that are like heroes, but then it's like, oh, fake out, we're really the villain. There are a lot of those villains on here, but they're all kind of really high on my list because I think they do it so well in Marvel. They do a really good job at making you really like them to then really hate them when they've turned on you.
Yeah.
We'll see a few more villains are like that too. And I think sometimes in like Disney movies, they don't work as well. But I think in Marvel, the whole Agatha all along thing, having the villain turn out to be the villain when you thought they were a hero is effective in Marvel, I think. And I think this is one of those cases. And then Trevor, it's like the opposite. It's like someone we thought was a villain who's really not. But I think, yeah, Jan Rog is really interesting. He was someone I did not think was going to be as high as 13 on my list, but I'm glad he is. Kelsey, who was your number? My 16 was Alexander Pierce. So who is your 16?
My 16 is Obadiah Stain.
Okay, that's my 15.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
Look
We were
at
like, we're
look at that.
doing it. All right, cool.
Who would have thought? Not me.
Yeah. So Obadiah Stane, he's the OG. So it's like hard
Yeah.
to like say that he didn't set the mold for like
Yeah.
this whole I'm a hero and now I'm secretly a villain. The thing is, a lot of people who I know watch this movie for the first time are like, oh, bald guy, he's the bad guy. And I look at that, I'm like, wait, really? You saw that coming? And I think it's because he set the trend so that now it seems more of a trope and more of a cliche. But looking back in the context of 2008, when this was the only movie in the MCU, I think it's a cool reveal. Oh, let me change the name. Sorry, oh, I never changed it down there. Obadiah Stain. Yeah, I think he's very interesting. I think honestly, what knocks him down for me is the fact that I think the Ironmonger itself isn't particularly interesting. I think it's
Yeah.
just a ripoff of Iron Man. And
Yeah.
I think he's more interesting when he's out of the suit than in the suit, which is a rare exception to a lot of these villains. I think he's more forgettable when he's just in that big tank, like the big chunk of armor. I think
Right.
he's much more effective when he's like screaming at the top of his lungs. And Jeff Bridges is just so good in this
Mhm.
role. When he's like that one scene where he's yelling at the other guy that we later see with Mysterio's little montage in Far From
Uh-huh.
Home, like
Uh-huh.
he's that guy. That scene is just so good because you are just terrified of him. His fear factor is surprisingly high for someone who should not be that high because he has no real power and his suit is not that impressive to me.
Yeah.
So tell me about Obadiah Stane from your point of view.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's the suit itself isn't that interesting, although I definitely wouldn't want to. He honestly, I was watching it and I was like, this guy's kind of giving me Iron Giant vibes. Have you ever seen that movie?
Of course I have. I love
Oh,
the
okay.
Iron Giant.
Okay, well, I just, I don't know. I don't know your
No, that
childhood,
wasn't like a duh, but it was like an oh my god, you know that movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you can't be afraid of the Iron Giant. He's a friendly Iron Giant.
Voiced
Um
by, do you know this piece of trivia? Do you know who voices the Iron Giant?
oh no, please tell me, Dale.
It
School
is.
me.
I'll give you a multiple choice. Actually, no. I'm going to tell you. It comes from your favorite Marvel movie, and he voices a very famous character in that movie.
Is it Vin Diesel? He voices the Iron Giant?
Yes, he does. So you must have a thing
Classic
for Vin
Vin.
Diesel. You
Classic
might just.
Vinny.
Yeah, do you watch Fast and Furious?
No, I haven't seen
That should
anything.
be your next. That should be your next binge if you love Vin Diesel. There you go. Iron Giant Guardians. So tell me more.
Yeah, so while you were talking, I had let me go back to my notes on him. Yeah, I like how he has a really flushed out backstory, and also my favorite moment in that film is when they're at the um convention award show type thing where they're on the red carpet, and while they're taking pictures, that is when he's revealing to him like, oh, who'd you think filed the injunction on you? Like, it was me. And that's when Tony really realizes that, like, oh my god, like, not only is he trying to just take Stark Industries out from under me, dealing he's been doing arms deals with the threats in the Middle East. So you know, just watching that whole moment unfold is really what pushed Obadiah Stane for me from to the almost to the top 15, but right outside of it.
Yeah, yeah. So now we are officially crossing over to our top half. So that was your 16. My 15 was Obadiah Stane. So who was your 15, Kels? Who was in your
15
the bottom
is
of your top half?
Schmidt. Schmidt from
Oh, Red Skull.
Captain America. Yes, the
You know
first
what? We're gonna save him.
Avengers.
We're gonna save him for later.
All right, let's save him for later. You
Yeah,
want to save him for later?
save him for
Let's save him
later.
for later.
My
14 is
14 is Ava Star Ghost.
Oh, we're saving her for later.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Who is your 14?
My 14 is Ego.
Guess what?
We're saving him for later.
That's right. We're gonna save him for later. All right. My 13 was Jan Rog. Who is your 13?
Justin Hammer
Oh, okay. All right.
from
Oh,
Iron
here's the
Man
thing.
2.
Here's the thing. I had him in my mind as a like top 20 villain, maybe. But then when I did the rankings, the reason why he's a good villain is because of the performance and because he's an interesting character. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he stacks up as a villain. I really just I have him at all the way at number 25, in case you forgot. Because when I
Yeah.
ranked it, his style his style was interesting. He's got a cool style. The way he like kind of like has that lollipop stick hanging out of his mouth, and like the way he carries himself is interesting. The performance is good, but I don't get a ton of backstory. He's just the same old, revenge. It's the revenge plot, like you said. It's like the person
Yeah.
who's just wants to rival Tony Stark because he's the other Tony Stark. He's like a Tony Stark who's jealous of another Tony Stark. His
Right.
relevance in the overall picture isn't that much, and he doesn't really have a lot of fear factor for me. He's kind of the minds instead of the brawn. So that's why he was like as low as 25 on my list. But Kelsey, I would love to hear why you revere Justin Hammer so much, because I do
Sam
think the performance is really good.
Sam Rockwell, correct?
Yes.
That's who plays Justin Hammer.
Oh
He
yeah.
is just so delightfully annoying throughout that entire movie. He gives
Yeah.
you no choice but not
Right.
to root for this character, to the point where, I like, for my complicated villain category, I like that category the most because it makes you, take a step back and, think like, oh, like these villains, these are the people that I'm not supposed to root for, but they're
Yeah.
making some valid points. They might be onto something over here, and that's where I love about them, where you kind of, you don't know who you side with almost. But for him, it's just the complete opposite. Like he's just this like annoying little tick that's just riding on Tony's back. He's been living in the shadow. He runs Hammer Industries, basically, which is the competing arms weapons dispensary. That's not the right word at all, but I'm gonna run with it. He runs the new weapons manufacturer. He's been competing with Tony, seemingly for since Stark Industries and Hammer Industries existed. So now he's finally getting an opportunity to just get that step above Tony, and I just think that he's taking his opportunity, and you don't like that he's the brain, but I kind of almost appreciate the fact that maybe he can't do the fighting himself, but he can, do the building and the engineering and that all operation itself.
The
Whereas
thing is, I like him as the brain. I just don't, for the context of this rubric, he isn't as scary as some of the other villains because he is only a brain, not the brawn. Kind of like
yeah,
Alexander Pierce, where he doesn't like have a lot of the. I get it. I get what you're saying, and I agree. Keep going with your train of thought. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. Because I was just gonna, I know we said before at the beginning we didn't have him on the list, but that's where I kind of, don't love Schmidt and Dr. Zola, is because Dr. Zola is the brains of that operation, to the point where it's like Schmidt might not even exist if it weren't for Dr. Zola, dare I
Mm,
say. I know we haven't talked about
hmm.
Schmidt yet. We're saving him for later, but just to
That's right.
compare the two, like Justin Hammer is kind of the opposite, where he can build something that could take down Tony Stark. He doesn't necessarily need Ivan Vanko slash Whiplash to do his bidding for him, but he is, helpful because they both realize that they have a common enemy in their mind, who is Tony Stark, which is why I really, really like this performance a lot. It really just came down to the performance, and if you can be evil and also entertain me, you've won me over in my book.
Yeah, I agree. I think his performance is so good, and he makes that character so good because he's so good. I think in terms of character, if we're just ranking them based on like just characters, I'd probably have him higher. But as a villain, just with the context of the rubric, like I said, I was surprised he was so low. But that's where I had him. So that was your number what?
13.
13. My 13 was Young. My 12. All right, here we go. So this is one we saved from earlier.
Okay.
I've come to bargain, Kelsey.
I was just about to say, are you about to say Dormammu is your number 12?
Here's
Break
the thing.
this down for me, Dill. I need to know
Um,
your thought process, because going into this list, I thought that Dormammu was literally going to be like your number 30.
I think the performance is the weakest part of Dormammu for me, just because it's Benedict Cumberbatch, and it's like, oh, it's cool to hear Benedict Cumberbatch, but it's only his voice, so you got to weigh that in. I weighed it in with Ultron, which I'll talk about later. It's just his voice, um, but I think his backstory. He is this legend. He is in all the myth, like the mythology is a lot of it centered around Dormammu. His relevance. He is literally the Thanos of that realm. He is like the big bad of that whole dark realm. His style, I think it's really cool the way his like face kind of like it's an accordion almost. Like I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
the
yeah.
style, the glowing eyes. I love just that whole planet sequence. And fear factor, if there is someone in an alleyway who I do not want to meet, even Thanos, I could say, you know what, Thanos, I will be your Squidward. Like, just let me go. But Dormammu, I'd be like, take me, kill me, do it, do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I gave him a 4.5 on Fear Factor just because, again, he is only in that little piece of the movie, so it's not as scary because I do have people who are ranked higher on fear factor on my list, just because um, they are scary the whole way through. I have two people higher on fear factor than Dormammu, but Dormammu is my number 3 for fear factor. He is scary as shit, and I get it. He's not in a lot of the movie, and that might weigh him down a little. But I don't think you can weigh him down. I think he's this massive force to be reckoned with, and that is why I've come to bargain with my number 12, Dormammu. I just think in sheer power, he's up there, and I think that has a lot to do with that part of his ranking.
I agree with you. I do think that he is very scary. He is scary to look at. He is
Was
literally
he your
just
he was
like
your 26?
yeah, my 26th.
Okay,
The
go ahead.
reason why he's down there for me is because he needs like a messenger. He needs a Cassilius. He needs someone to kind of grant him access to the rest of the world in order to actually impose a threat to, reality. And for that reason, I had him lower just because he's kind of just this being that's at the mercy of other people stumbling upon him and his power and to unlock kind of thing. So that's why I had him much lower. But
Give me a quick second. I my AirPods disconnected. Give me like a quick second. Why don't you talk about your my number 11 is Helmet Zemo. So why don't you talk about Zemo real quick?
oh
And
my
I will be
god.
right back.
Honestly, if Dill can tell me when he gets back what Helmet Zemo even wants in Civil War, I don't even know what he wants. Is it revenge? Is he just trying to carry out a legacy because he unlocks Bucky's mind just to kill the other Winter Soldiers? Or he just wants to create a conflict between Steve and Tony. He wants to take down the Avengers. Is it all of the above? I guess I'm just going to have to stay tuned because that
I
was
am
the
back.
reason why he was so low is because I
I
had
heard
him.
everything you were saying. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I heard everything you were saying. It's just I
I
had to
was I'm
have my
just going to
AirPods in
finish
there.
my sentence
All
still.
right, go ahead. Finish your sentence.
That's the reason why he was so low for me was because I just did not understand what his motivation was.
Hmm.
He was in
Uh,
my miscellaneous category.
yeah, I think it's
And
interesting because
yeah,
that movie exists without him, but because he's in there, it only heightens the tension to me. It only like makes what
tell me what he wants.
he wants to disassemble this Avengers. He's part
Okay.
of the reason why that Avengers unit crumbles like that. That is the main turning point is I haven't watched this movie in a little while, so I might have to revisit it, but I think a lot of the turning point is when the whole Bucky thing comes in. Is he the one who shows Tony the Bucky stuff?
So they get to the facility in Siberia where the rest of the Winter Soldiers are being kept. We find out that he's killed the rest of the Winter Soldiers, so they're going there expecting to fight the rest of them off, but they're already dead because Zemo killed them. And then he's just kind of behind this uh observatory room where he then plays the tape of Bucky killing Tony Stark's parents. So he's just there to create a wedge between Steve and Tony.
Yeah, I think that wedge was already breaking with the Sokovia Accords, but he's the one who finally like pushed through it. He's the water in the dam. The dam is
Okay.
starting to break, and he's the one that pushed through. I think he is a really compelling villain. Sorry, because like kind of what you were saying with Justin Hammer, he doesn't need to be the brawn, but he has the brain, and that is. I guess I'm making the same argument for him as I'm making for Justin Hammer for you in the
Okay.
fact that he is the brains of this operation and he pulls it off. But I think the difference is I think he's actually terrifying when he does it. Like I'm scared when I'm watching him, and his fear factor is pretty high for me. Like I thought he was a really solid villain. I get it. You have him really low, right? You have him at 28.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I heard a little bit of your spiel as to why you had him low, but I find him a really intriguing character. I don't think he needs to be in that movie, but I think him being in that movie just heightens things even more, and that is why he's not in my top 10. His relevance is a little low, his style isn't there, but I think the fear factor, he does some scary shit that is pretty alarming. His performance, I think, is great. I think he does a great job. Daniel Bruhl, who I love from Inglourious Bastards and other movies. His backstory, I mean, you have a lot of his backstory in that movie. You get a lot of that. So that's why I have him high. I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, I am disagreeing with you, but you're not wrong. I do have to revisit the movie. I think the movie could exist without him, but I think he is the straw that breaks the camel's back. You know what I mean?
Sure. I get what you're saying. His presence definitely raises the stakes in that film. I mean, because I guess without him, then really the only like villain per se is Cap or Tony, depending on whose side you're on. Which
Right.
really quick, Team Cap or Team Iron Man, Dill.
I have to watch the movie again because I think at the time it came out, I was Cap. Watching the movie, I was Iron Man. And then after all this MCU stuff has passed, I don't know how I would react. In terms of picking one or the other just as a person, I guess Cap, but I don't know. So I will have to rewatch and let you know. Civil War is one of those movies that the highs are so ingrained in my brain that I don't need to revisit it often. But again, like even Zemo, I think there are pieces that I am missing that I need to go back and see that won't crack my top 10 yet. But if only they could make a show about Zemo to like tell us, what his deal is, but that won't happen. He's not he's not a Loki.
Yeah.
All right. So number 12, I skipped over for you. What was number 12 for you?
Aldrich Killian.
Okay, so we're going to go back to Aldrich. He was my 21, so he was the top of my bottom third. Why don't you tell me why you love Aldrich Killian enough to put him in your 12 spot? It's pretty high.
Well, I like his performance a lot. I'm forgetting the name of the actor, as per usual.
Guy Pearce.
Guy Pearce. Yes, that's who it was.
Memento.
L.A. Confidential.
Okay. We both pulled two really good movies out of our ass. Good job. Memento and L.A. Confidential. Very good.
Yeah, I think he does a great performance, and I think that he's a great combination now of Justin Hammer and what you were saying about Helmut Zemo, them there being a brain and a bronze to the operation. He's figured out a way to make himself, the creator, the inventor, the brawn of the operation as well, which I really highly appreciate it. I mean, I really think that the super soldier, like kind of almost having like Wolverine type powers, being able to regenerate, your limbs. I find that like super interesting. I thought that it, brought in a heightened sense of stakes and everything during the fight sequences, which made them more exciting in this movie. So I really liked his style. I like that it takes him a few tries to like, really knock him out, and ultimately it's Pepper who takes him out in the end.
I love that. I love that whole ending. Iron Man 3 is so underrated. I love it. Keep going. I just want to say it.
Really? I thought that Iron Man 3 was like appropriately rated. I feel like it's up there for a lot of people.
I think, and we'll talk about it in your top 10. I think there are some reasons people don't like it. I really do. I dig it. I think it's really
Iron
cool.
Man 3.
We'll talk about it in a little while. But keep going with what you were saying.
Yeah. I like his performance, the style, the fear factor. He just kills Maya Hansen. Like he's trying to get what he wants by any means necessary, which makes him scary and entertaining and fascinating.
So here's my thing. He is the epitome of the nerd who loved his idol, was told he was either not worthy or kind of set aside by his idol. What?
Oh my god, he's the Syndrome.
He's Syndrome. He's Syndrome. He is Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He is Catwoman in Batman Returns. He is Cheetah in Wonder Woman 84. It is this nerdy, unassuming, sweet, a little awkward person, and someone wrongs them, and then they have to become the villain. They rip off the glasses. It's that stereotype that I just can't stand, and that is why he is so low. I really like his powers. I like the performance. I think he's relevant in that story. The thing that docks him way down is that backstory and that whole setup. It's so cliche. Back then it might not have been, but seeing all this come out, you really have to nail that trope, and I think that trope is just so overdone. I think Batman Returns should have been the last time they did it with Catwoman. Put it to bed. That is why he's low. But I do respect it because I do love Iron Man 3, and I do love this villain. So I'm glad you have him as high as you do at number 12. That's awesome. So what is your number 11? Is this another Iron Man villain?
It is not.
Because there's someone that we saved for later that is still not appearing.
No.
Okay, who's your 11?
My 11 is Vulture.
Okay, we're saving
Adrian
him for later.
Toomes.
We'll save him for later.
Wow, I cannot believe how high he is for you, Dill.
And I'll be honest, I don't love that movie. I actually don't really like that movie. So the fact that he is so high, I know we've talked about it. That I would have liked it to be more Peter's movie than Iron Man's movie.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, I just think you don't need that extra element to me. I mean, I get that's the whole point. I would have rather them gone a different direction than like him trying to find his way into the Avengers. I feel like that could have been like 10 minutes of the next Avengers movie rather than a whole movie about it. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that, but we are here to talk about villains. So that was your 11. So we're saving them for later. My number 10. So here we go. We have no more save for laters. This is just our top 10.
Okay.
We have a lot in common. It looks like we have 6 villains in common in this top 10, and 4 of them trade off, depending. You have 4 villains in the top 10 that I did not, and one of those I'm very happy about. My 10 is Ego. So that was your, what number was that for you?
14.
14. Yeah, I like Ego. I think he is an interesting, like I said, not like him, like I don't like what he's doing, but I like the villain.
No, I know.
Oh, okay, you laughed. I wasn't sure. I'm
I
not
just laugh
justifying what he
because
did.
every time I think of Ego, I just like he wants to impregnate planets. Is that his whole thing? That he just
The thing
wants
is,
to like
it's weird. It's weird, but
inseminate
it's
the
scary.
universe?
It's a weird thing,
Yeah.
but he sells it so well because he's slimy, he's obnoxious. I love the performance. Kurt
Yeah.
Russell's great. He is genuinely scary when he keeps like reanimating after he's like gotten a chunk of his skull knocked out of him.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I like the way they set him up as this. It's similar to the Aldrich Killian thing, except Aldrich becomes the villain after being disappointed, whereas here it is an idol that was villainous all along that Star-Lord is idolizing, who then turns out to not be who he said he was. And it's one of those don't meet your heroes type thing where like they say don't meet your heroes because you're going to get disappointed. It's one of those things, but instead of the villain being the person who is disappointed by their hero, this is the hero that is disappointing the fan. And I think it would be like if Syndrome met Mr. Incredible, he turned out to be a douchebag, and then Mr. Incredible ended up being the main villain. You know, this is what it feels like. Star-Lord has talked the whole first movie and part of the second movie about his dad, and now he finally has him, and he turns out to not be what he imagined. And I think that alone, regardless of whether or not you're an entire planet in a person, you know, like that's already scary and daunting. But the fact that you made your son believe in you and made him think you were this amazing person, even when you meet him, you're treating him like he wants to be treated his whole life, only to rip the rug out from under him. I think that was a really compelling and effective twist. And the whole "I put a tumor in your mother" thing, like that is a top 10 villain for me because it is just to the point of remorseless. You know, he has no remorse. He's just, you know, ego. He has an ego. That's his name. And he does not care what anyone thinks. And it's really interesting. It's a really interesting dynamic. That's why Guardians 2 is one of my favorite movies in this universe and favorite superhero movies, period, because of that relationship that you want so badly to work out. And then when you realize it doesn't, it's crushing, you know? So that's why I had him this high.
Cool. I mean, I hear you, Dill. I agree with everything that you said. The only thing that kept Ego, he's in my top 15, but what kept him really out of my top 10 was for me, the problem that you have with Killian, I have with Ego, where I feel like this is an overdone trope that I see time and time
Oh,
again,
okay.
where like an absentee parent comes back into the child's life like unexpectedly, and the child's like, "Oh my god, like I'm going to have my mom or my dad back in my life. This is going to be great. They said that we're going to Disney World next week and that I'm going to get to move in with them." And then, cut to a few days later and the parent took off again, stole all the money, and is like hooked back on drugs. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like
Hmm.
that's like a plot. I
Hmm.
might have just described a whole movie and I don't realize it,
Yeah.
but that's like a plot like that I saw time and time again. Like, I think this is the overdone trope for me, that because as soon as I knew that we were getting Peter's father, it was predictable for me. For me from the start, like I knew he was going to be not what we thought he was going to be at
I
all.
guess maybe I guess maybe part of me was like, it's another
It's
one
too
of the
good to be true
Guardians.
kind of thing.
Yeah, because you already had the sister relationship with Nebula and Gamora, and they ended up, rekindling that. So I was thinking, they were just going to go with the Nebula direction as like that family member that clashes with the group. Um, it took me by surprise, but also I try not to buy into the tropes. I always think they're going to subvert them, and then they don't. So I'm like, oh, okay. But I always give them the benefit of the doubt, and I let myself be surprised by them every time, even if I should have seen them coming. The difference, though, I think, is a lot of the times for the trope that you're saying, like we see the person originally had good intentions, but then realized that they were or made a mistake, or then realized they weren't fit for that lifestyle. Whereas Ego, from the moment he even impregnates Peter's mom, he's doing it in complete malicious intent. And I
Mm,
think that's the difference. Is it's not like this turn where Ego had Quill and was like, I can't take care of him, I've got to go, or I can't be in this kid's life. No, it was, I'm gonna put a fucking tumor in her, and then I'm gonna get my son, and we're gonna take over the universe. Like I think his intentions from the start are so evil that it
mm,
just is genuinely scary to me.
sure.
Um, so what is your number 10, Kels?
My number 10 is Trevor Slattery.
Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy!
I
I'm
do.
so happy. I'm so happy.
I love Trevor. I
I
do.
do
I
too.
really do. First of
How did
all,
it work on your? How did your rubric get you to this point, though?
so let me look at my notes for Trevor. Um one moment. Where is he? Trevor Slattery, here he is. So first of all, first off, I took what their motivation was, their backstory. That's the first thing that I took under consideration. And this guy is just a struggling actor with a drug addiction, and his whole motivation is just to get more drugs. And I love that. I love how simple and concrete he is. He's like, "What? They promised you they'd get you off drugs?" And he goes, "No, they promised me more." And I just, I ate that up. I gave very few people like perfect scores for performance. He was one of them. I
Wow,
loved this guy's performance as Trevor. I thought that it
Ben
was just,
Kingsley, yeah.
yeah, I thought that he was just such a delicious contrast to the rest of the movie. Like he's just like this fun-loving guy who's just doing this like quirky little side gig for his acting job and to, get his fix on whatever drug is of choice, he likes.
Mhm.
And I just think that he's just great because he's just brilliantly clueless. And I eat it up. I eat
Yeah,
everything Trevor's given me in this movie, and
yeah.
I'm
The
loving it.
reason he's lower on my list is ultimately I didn't get a lot of relevance and backstory in the whole scheme of things. Like we
Sure.
don't learn a lot about him as a person other than what we're given surface level. But Fear Factor, a lot of people would say he's a joke, but until you get that reveal, he is genuinely scary.
Yeah.
Those Mandarin commercials are genuinely scary.
Yeah.
Or I don't even think they're commercials; they're like the videos that are sent out.
Yeah.
Um, but his style's great. I love the style of the Mandarin itself. Like he is a scary villain until he's not. But part of the whole of Iron Man 3 is this It's like the Wizard of Oz. It's the don't look at the man behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
He is the man that you're seeing. He is the scary. He is the fear factor of Iron Man 3 for a good majority of it. Does
Yeah.
he pan out to be the villain in real life? Not really. But until then, he is genuinely scary. That doesn't diminish his fear factor, even though it was a joke. If at the end of Infinity War he snaps, the half of the galaxy goes away, and Thanos takes off a mask, and it's Trevor Slattery, we've still spent 2.5 hours being terrified of this Thanos guy.
Yeah.
Like, that does not diminish it for me. I think if anything,
Yeah,
it
totally.
makes it more impressive that Trevor was able to be as convincing as he was in this role. He is that good of an actor that he was able to pull it off. And I love the character. I really think it's an interesting character. And this is where we will talk about Iron Man 3. A lot of people don't like it because this is not true to the comics, and it's not, you know, they kind of had the rug pulled out under them, but I really like that. I think it keeps it surprising. I think it fits within the tone of the movie itself. We get a lot of great moments with Tony himself in this movie.
Mhm.
So to have this villain, if you just made Aldrich Killian the villain the whole time, is it as effective as this sleight of hand magic trick where they say, "Whoop, you thought I was a villain. I wasn't. I'm Trevor Slattery." And it's really Aldrich Killian. And I think it works so well. The third
Yeah.
act of Iron Man 3 is so good.
Yeah.
And I don't get why people don't like it. If you don't like it, fair. It's fine. I'm okay with it. I didn't make these movies. I really don't care. You can sound off in the comments as to why you don't. I'd love to hear why. I fully don't get it, why people don't like this movie. And I think Trevor is one of the most refreshing surprises in the MCU to me.
Iron Man 3 is definitely like top 10. If not top
Oh, for
5,
me too.
definitely top 10
For me too.
for sure.
Even with WandaVision, it's still in the top 10. Yeah, I think he's great. I kept him at 17 just because he does not have any powers and he physically cannot hurt people, and but he sells it well, and his motivation is clear, and he is a villain. He sets Tony back. Every minute Tony spends in this idiot's lair
Yeah.
is a minute where Aldrich is getting away with some other shit. So Trevor is a puppet to the puppet master, but I think he's the most effective puppet in that he misleads the audience and the characters. So I love that you put him all the way at 10. My number 9 is one of your choices from earlier that we saved for later, Red Skull, aka Johann Schmidt. What did you put him at? What was your number?
He's number 15 for me.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's one of the more iconic looking villains. Like, I think when you see him,
I
you know,
agree.
if you picked him out of a lineup, he's one of the most interesting stylistically. I think his backstory is fine. I like how they weave it into the whole Nazi storyline. I think it's interesting because you use a villain that everyone can relate to. Everyone can relate to Nazis in the sense that they are evil. You think Nazis, you
Everyone
think
can
evil.
relate to Nazis.
Well, I mean, people with their
Those
right
guys.
mind know that Nazis are evil. There are people who would argue against that, but I don't want them even watching this. Because in my mind and your mind and most people's minds, Nazis are evil. And so you already have this evilness of Nazis, and now you have Red Skull. It makes him automatically scarier and more villainous, and there's no redeeming quality to him once
Mhm.
you slap that Nazi label on him. So already his backstory and fear factor is high for me. His style is high for me. His relevance, he was relevant. He got even more so relevant when you bring him into Infinity War and Endgame. And that's
Mhm.
honestly where a lot of more of the fear factor comes, because he's this dark, looming presence. And when you see him, in order to get what you want, someone's got to die. And he's shows no remorse for it.
Mhm.
And sure, it's a punishment. It's not his, motivation to do that. But at the same time, he's the face of that. He's the face of Vormir. Is that what it's called? Vormir?
Vormir, yeah.
Yeah, he's the face of that. When you see Red Skull, Black Widow and Gamora are dying. Like, when you watch those movies again, you're like, oh shit. When you see him with that cape and the hood, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
really
yeah.
like it. I really like it. I like his performance. I think Hugo Weaving is great. I think Ross Marquand, they did recast it for Infinity War and Endgame, and I think Ross is great. He's on The Walking Dead. He does great impressions. He's a great recast. He does it almost perfectly. You wouldn't be able to tell it was a different actor.
I had no
I think he's
idea it was a recast.
There you go. I
Yeah.
think it's solid all the way through. The only thing is, he's not necessarily quote unquote the most powerful hands-on. You know, it's a lot more of, again, like we said, the brains of the operation. But I do think he is definitely top 10 for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you, Jill. I mean, I think that his motivation's clear. Like he wants to be the most powerful. Like he wants complete and utter control. He wants the power of the gods, as he says, while fighting Cap. The only complaint that I have about Schmidt is what I mentioned really briefly earlier is that, he really can't exist and he can't carry out his plan without Dr. Zola, which I think makes
Mm,
him a little less threatening and a little less,
okay.
you know, competent almost because he he has to rely on, if not Dr. Zola, then another scientist to help him carry out, what the Tesseract is actually capable of doing, what kind of experiments they can do on it, what it will do to him or anyone who touches it, kind of thing. Like he's dependent on someone else, which makes him less of a threat in my eyes. And
Mhm.
but I do appreciate the fact that it is just like a good old fashioned, like, it's during World War II. It's like a good old fashioned, just like dictator trying to take control. And so I agree with you. I do think that he is a more iconic villain in the MCU.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Um, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is Hela from Thor Ragnarok.
Okay. So how about this? If it's in our top 5, we'll save it for later. Okay? Because she's in my top 5, so we'll save her for later.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because, I want to talk about her later. Because she's
Okay.
in my top 5. We're gonna save her for later.
Hey, I'm not
Um,
disagreeing.
okay. Um, who is okay? My number 8 is your number 11, which is Vulture.
All right.
Um,
Let's talk about him.
so like you said, you were surprised. I was too. But when I put that movie on, the highlight for me is him. He is the
Okay.
highlight. I don't love his suit. I don't think it's anything necessarily interesting, and I think style is where he dips down for me. I gave him less than a 3 on style. I don't think his suit is anything too impressive. But everything else, his fear factor, he's not scary because he's the Vulture. He's scary because he's Peter's crushes Liz, her father.
Mhm.
That is the fear factor. And honestly, it makes his villain, it's not the scariest in the MCU, but it is the most relatably scary in the MCU. Like when I saw those scenes of him dropping Peter off at the prom, that is one of the top 5 scenes in the MCU for me because of how good Michael Keaton is and how much he sells it and how much he fucking scares the shit out of you. In just without the suit. And I think that is what makes Adrian Toomes an amazing villain. Vulture, not as much, but Adrian Toomes is a scary ass villain. He has a backstory. He has that whole connection to the Avengers 2012 movie. He has relevance, obviously, because he is, essentially part of Peter's coming of age story as this father of the girlfriend, but also as a villain. And he's going to be bringing the Sinister Six together later on in the universe. So he's going to have relevance later on. And performance, Michael Keaton, it's next to, I mean, it's not my top performance ranked, but it's next to very few. And I think there are only 4 performances I put above Michael Keaton's in terms of performances in my rubric. I
Mhm.
love his character so much. I don't love that movie for all the reasons I said. I think it's too much of trying to get him into the Avenger. It's too much focused on the bigger picture of the MCU when I wanted it to just be about Peter.
Sure.
And the scenes with him and Liz and her dad are the best scenes because of that, because it's all focused on that relationship. I mean, it's when you date a significant other, their parents. It's the whole thing with in-laws. They're meant to scare you, But this is even scarier because he's also this murdering science vulture dude.
Yeah.
It's not just a girl's dad. This guy is literally gonna kill you for real. It's not a metaphorical, you know. So Vulture is easily a top 10 villain for me. What do you think of Vulture? I talk too much.
So I agree with you, Jill. He's right outside my top 10. And you know what? I was a little surprised that even I put him that high up because he can easily fall into a very predictable, I've seen it once, I've seen all of them kind of trope kind of thing.
Mhm.
But first of all, I do think that Michael Keaton is just a scary dude, just like in general.
Yeah,
Like I think that
he is,
he's scary.
and it's
In
interesting because
everything he does.
in his prime, he was Batman. You know, he was lovable. He was the not ingenue, uh,
Leading man.
leading man. Thank you. Um, you know, he was the leading man,
He was a girl
but
next door.
Michael Keaton was the girl next door. He was Mr. Mom. He was the lead of Mr. Mom. He played Mr. Mom. And he was like a comedian. Everyone loved him. And now in his older roles, he's getting to do this stuff. And it's so cool because he's totally different from what he was when he was Batman. You know, he's this menacing, scary guy. I love it.
I just like his story and his character just because it's so classic that it's all the things that we're familiar with that we can relate to, you know. It's this guy who's kind of he's literally like shoveling rocks in the beginning of the movie. Like that's his job. He's tired of
Hmm.
working this like very like um is blue collar the term when you're like
Yeah.
a construction worker?
Mhm.
Great. He's tired of working this blue collar job. He wants more out of life. He's in my money slash power category of the villains. He has these dumb, like, funny, there for the comic relief henchmen that he uses to kind of like carry out his master plan. And what I love the most about this movie and this performance is that I did not see it coming at all. It floored me the first time I ever
Yeah.
saw Homecoming. It was not predictable. It absolutely stunned me. I was shocked. I was shocked.
I agree. I think when he opens that door and you see it's him, it's obvious. It almost made me go, "Wow, of course, of course."
Like
But at
I
the same
should have
time, I
seen
was
this
like,
coming.
yeah, I should have
Yeah,
seen it coming, but you don't because
but you don't.
it's just so good. It's so good. That whole prom sequence is a top 5 MCU scenes for me. I wish the rest of the movie was as good as it. I know you love it. And also you love Tom so much. I love Tom also as Spider-Man. I have another favorite Spider-Man, but I do love Tom. I wish Tom had a little more freedom, and I think he gets the most freedom in these scenes with Michael Keaton. So, wow, great villain.
Great
What
villain.
is your what is your sorry, I was looking down and writing. I was listening to everything you were saying, but I'm adding up the totals as we go. So at the end, it's not just me sitting writing for like 5 minutes of silence,
Oh, okay.
because we're getting to the nitty gritty, and at the end we're gonna rank all of them together.
Got it.
Who's your number 8?
My number 8 is the Black Order or the Children of Thanos.
Okay. Um, Tell me about the Black Order and Children of Thanos because I like this spot for you for ranking him.
So I think that they're a scary bunch, first of
Hmm.
all. I think that they're even a little bit I mean, I don't think that they're more scary than Thanos, but I
No.
think that they're definitely as terrifying, I would say. I like
Oh yeah.
how each of the children kind of have their own fighting style. Squidward is like the most interesting, the way that he just like moves things without even blinking an eye. Like he's
Yeah.
just so fluid in his motion and how he uses his power. It's almost like very aesthetically pleasing the way he just like it's just like so smooth the way he's just like, oh, nope, that's not going to hit me. Like he's just it's just very entertaining to watch. I like how there's just like this big like almost Hulk like just like doesn't say a word, very classic brawn of the group. And then there's the brother and sister Proxima
Proxima
Midnight,
Midnight.
I
Hmm.
believe is her name. I think that, I like how she's kind of like the most interesting. uh they have their own kind of fighting style, so style was up there for me, relevance is up there for me, um the fear factor is up there for me. I had to put them in the top 10 just because, as much as I hate them because they're tearing apart my favorite group of people, the Avengers, I gotta commend them for, doing a really good job at their job, which was being the muscle behind Thanos, who didn't need muscle.
Right. The reason why I have them so low, and this is not me wanting them to be low, this is just the rubric,
Hmm.
is the one thing you left out was backstory. I feel like they just are there, and it's like,
Right,
who are they?
right,
And they're so
totally.
powerful that it's almost like they should have built this up, or at least like had an introduction where he's like, "All right, children, it's time for our mission," or something like that. Because Thanos, we've gotten like little teases of him along the way. Gamora
Mm,
has talked about him. Nebula has talked about him. But this
mhm.
Black Order just kind of they're just
Arrive.
there,
Yeah.
and it's like I want to know what's the deal with them. I just want to know more. So I actually have them really low on backstory, and I think that's what dragged down their ranking. And looking back, I think they're a little unfairly ranked. They were number 20 for me, but I think again, Squidward is Ebony Maw is so good. The other three to me aren't as memorable
Okay.
and aren't as powerful. I think Ebony Maw could be there and get a lot of the job done himself. I think the other three they fight well, but they're easily taken out. You know, like Scarlet Witch just gets rid of Proxima Midnight like that, like very easily. Like I know she has the help, I know, but when she does, it's like she squashes her like a bug. You know,
Sure.
it just feels like the other three are not as memorable as Ebony Maw,
Okay.
and only because Ebony Maw's design is so good. The other three, I don't love their design. I think the CGI looks a little on them.
Okay.
So their style was a little low for me. Fear Factor is up there, top 10. Fear Factor, scary as hell. But I just wish we got a little bit more backstory, a little bit more given to the other three rather than just Ebony Maw, because we get a lot from him, not enough from the others. And again, like he puts that spear through Vision, and then Vision ends up surviving that. Like it weakens him,
Mm,
but that would have killed anyone else.
sure.
They don't justify all of them being as scary as Ebony Maw. So that's why they're low. I'm trying to justify it for myself because when I averaged all of them out and added up the totals, I saw they were so low. I was like, what? Why? And it's just that I just didn't. I don't know. It's because I think one is more important than the others. I think if we were ranking all four of them in this ranking separately, Ebony Maw would be like a top 12, where the other three would be in my 20s, you know?
No, yeah, I totally get
Yeah.
what you're saying. All of
All
it.
right. So what is your number 8? My 8
My,
was Vulture. Oh, was that your 8?
that was my 8.
All right. So my 7 is Ultron.
He's my number 5.
Okay. So we'll save him for later, a little later.
Okay.
Yeah. Just, to spice things up a little bit. Um,
My number 7 is Quentin Beck.
let's save him for later.
Okay. You
Um,
got it.
all right. So this brings us to our number 6. You had him criminally low, Ulysses Claw.
Oh, okay. Sure. Let's talk about him.
Why don't you give your thoughts first, since I'm a huge Claw fan?
Listen, I enjoy his personality. I think that he's, a more light, he has a kind of funnier, lighthearted take on a villain where he's not so serious all the time. Um I just think that his motivation is like really weak. It's just like money, and he just like wants to sell vibranium, and he's easily taken out by Killmonger. It was fun while it lasted, but at the end of the day, he's really only there to kind of be the vibranium dealer to Ultron and to Killmonger. Like both like Age of Ultron and Black Panther can kind of function without him a little bit, I think.
Mhm.
So that's why he was just so low for me.
I think he's high on my list because I think Andy Serkis just eats it up. He is so good, and we
Okay.
see him in Gollum and Caesar and Planet of the Apes. Like we see him do these like motion capture performances, which it's him, but it's not really him. Here, it's all him. Like you get to see him acting as Andy Serkis, and it's so good for me. He just relishes in all the dialogue, like in the confrontation with Martin Freeman's character, like when the two of them are sitting in that room, and he's just chatting away.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
love that. I love a
Yeah.
villain who is like not phased whatsoever, not scared. And when you finally see him being scared, it's only once, and it's when Killmonger's about to kill him.
Yeah.
And we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. But Ulysses Claw, I think he's just awesome. I love watching him. The thing with his arm, I think is genuinely scary. I think he's actually scary because of it, because he's a
Okay.
henchman, but he's not even like Crossbones, where he's like, a henchman who can fight. He has like an arm that could like literally just like slice shit up and blow things up. Like he slices that glass with his hand. He just goes like this and the glass shatters. I'm like, whoa, like
Sure.
this guy is cool. I love him. I think it's more of a personal pick. I would give him a little bit of bias because I just really like him. But that was my number 6. So what is your number 6? There's someone you haven't mentioned yet, and I'm like, who's your number
Imagine
6?
he's my number 1. No, you've been waiting for him this entire time. It's Ivan Vanko is my number
Oh
6.
my god,
Okay,
Kels.
I watched Iron Man 2 again, and I freaking loved this performance. I loved his style. I loved everything about what was happening here. Because
Oh,
listen, he was just so ruthless and like he literally the first time we see him, like he's obviously like he is the same thing with Killian where he became the brains and the brawn of his own operation. He is it in one. He can build and be technological, and he, builds drones for um Justin Hammer. And but he's also a big scary dude who's tattooed the fuck out. He has a pet cockatoo, which I love that. I'm eating it up. And I think that he, like, the second time we see him in the movie, he literally just struts out onto a raceway. There is a NASCAR event happening. He just struts out like it's no one's business and just starts whipping Tony with his whips. And his whole premise is not even to really kill Tony Stark, but just keeps saying, like, look, you lose. And you know why? Because now the whole world knows that you're not indestructible and you're not as bad and badass and prepared and smart. Like there's people smarter than you. There's people with the technology that you say you're the only one who's mastered. There's people like me out here, man. And you know what? Even if I didn't get a good strike on you right now, the whole world just witnessed your fall, the fall of Tony Stark. And I really did enjoy this performance. I cannot believe you're like flabbergasted by my.
he is 4th to the bottom. So let me give you my overall totals for the bottom 4. Everyone scored above a 10 except for 5 people. Um, Thaddeus Ross had a 9.9. Uh, Malekith had a 2.6. Sonny Birch had a 3. Laufey had a 5.7. He had a 6.8. Like he's not even getting a 6.9. He is just. Let me put him up. I forgot to put him up on the screen. Sorry for anyone
Sure.
watching. His name is not there. Just because I was flabbergasted is the word. I I don't get it. I think he's in a totally different movie. Mickey Rourke. Like Mickey Rourke is a legend. He is amazing. There's a movie called The Wrestler, Kelsey. It's about a wrestler, an aged retired wrestler trying to cling on to his glory days in Rahway, New Jersey, and Elizabeth, New Jersey. So like very close to home. I recommend that movie if you like him. Whoa, my hair. I don't know what just happened.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think he's really good in that movie. I don't think he's really good in this movie. I maybe I'm missing something. I just the whips, it's all kind of silly to me. It doesn't really scare me. At the end, he's just kind of Ironmonger 2.0 with his big suit or whatever. He again,
Mm.
Justin Hammer is all the brains to his brawn. I think because I'm so soured on the movie itself, I don't think it's a particularly good movie. That I just don't really care enough for him. I'm surprised he's this high. I'm glad you did put him this high because I think you know it should be fair and honest, and that is your honest opinion and ranking. I just personally cannot. I don't want to waste much time just because he's one of those forgettable villains, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, haha, funny.
I
Um,
disagree entirely, Dill. I think
I
you
don't
need to
know.
give Iron Man 2 a watch because he is the brains. He comes in and
Then what is Justin Hammer? You know?
he designed some stuff. I feel like Justin Hammer's more like the cruise director to like Hammer Industries, where he
Hmm.
has more advanced, smarter scientists kind of really execute his ideas, where he single-handedly comes in and redesigns all of the suits to make them drones. He programs them for them to all start attacking Tony. He has his own agenda the entire time, and he wants his bird. That's all he wants. He says, I want my bird. That's it. And I love it. I
Yeah,
love how he has a pet cockatoo. I love it. I'm a fan.
this
I'm a
is
fan.
this is your hot take of the day. Because honestly, I will tell you right now, 80% of our audience would probably disagree with you, but
I
that's
don't
okay.
I don't care.
No, you shouldn't care because honestly, this is our rankings. I don't give a shit. I had who did I have pretty high? Dormammu. I don't give a shit. He's my number 12. I'm happy. You know,
Good. I'm happy. I'm so happy with
I have
Ivan
Claw. I have
being my
Claw at number
number
6.
6.
Claw is my number 6 MCU villain, and Ivan Vanko is your number 6. I think 6 is just a fun number to have, like that villain that no one else saw coming there. Um, I can't believe you put him aside, but I'm very happy you did. Like it's your list, and I love it. I love it. All right, my number 5. We talked about her a little bit earlier. Hela is my number 5.
Okay, so
So
she was my number 9.
yeah, um, so Thor Ragnarok, I like. I don't like it as much as other people because I think it's a little tonally at odds. I think you have a lot of like that Shakespeareanness that they're trying to cling on to, but then there's so much humor peppered in that it sometimes clashes.
Sure.
And I think both are so strong because Taika Waititi is so good at the comedic stuff, but Kate Blanchett is just so good as Hela that like that Shakespeareanness is just awesome. Her style, she's one of the top 5 I have for style because I love that headpiece she has, her
Mhm.
costume. She is badass. Her backstory is clear. You don't need to know who she is, but her backstory is very clear from the get-go. You know, she felt wronged by Odin, she felt set aside. Um, her relevance her relevance is huge. She is the factor in the destruction of Asgard. There's a reason there's a new Asgard is because Hela destroyed the other one. And fear factor, she's scary. Performance, she's great. I don't have a complaint about her. That's why she's top 5 for me. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree with all those things. I love her style. I love how she kind of just like knives just like materialize in her arms and she just like
Right?
throws them left and right. I don't know if
Awesome.
you notice this still, but as the movie goes on, her headpiece gets like bigger as she gets more
Hmm.
powerful, which I love.
Yeah.
Was a great detail I noticed.
Mhm.
Kate
I
Blanchett
agree.
is just like fantastic. She just like commands the screen as this character. She doesn't even have to do much. I also just loved her. I'm still talking about her style, really, but like I really noticed the detailing in her makeup that they gave her, specifically her eye makeup, just like makes her blue eyes just become so much more piercing and much more menacing that it really just draws us into her. I mean, the only reason why she's a little bit lower for me is because yeah, she has a they give her backstory very quickly. She's a banished sister because she's the goddess of death. She was a bad egg from the beginning. We had to get rid of her. She comes in, she destroys Thor's hammer. Like she's a crazy bitch. We love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
She's a little bit lower for me just because she didn't want much else other than something that we've seen time and time again, which is just kind of like world domination and or like universe domination. I guess she was
Mhm.
like, I want to get Asgard back on top. Like I wish there was a little bit more layers to her motive and her objective in the film because I feel like that would have made her like more interesting, but instead it just kind of like everything else was like fantastic about her, but then her objective was so like just run of the mill.
Right. Yeah. To counter that though, it is more than just world domination. It's also revenge and world domination. It's kind
Sure.
of two in the same. But I get it. Like it's a very stereotypical like I want to destroy the world. But there's another villain that neither of us have talked about that kind of has similar motives.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of how they address it and how they go about doing it. I love Hella. We both do, both in our top 10. In my top 5, I know who you said your top 5 was earlier, so let's talk about him, Mr. James Spader. Whoa, Mr. Robert California. What do you think of Ultron?
Oh, I love Ultron Dill. I
Hmm.
love him. I love his
Yeah,
villainous
he's
because
my 7. He's my 7. So we're very close.
listen, I think that first of all, James Spader, even though it is just the voice, it is just he's so captivating. I don't know how he did it, but I just like I'm intrigued the entire I'm on the edge of my seat that entire movie because of the
Right.
way he embodies and uh puts Ultron to life. Um I love that he, kind of has similar motives, but at the same time not, because the way that I understand Ultron's objective is that he wants to achieve peace. Like that is his goal, because that is what Tony implemented in Vision and Ultron, is that he wanted a peacekeeping um uh mechanism. And the way that Ultron kind of manipulates it in his own way is that, well, if you want peace, then you can only achieve peace if there is nothing. So I think that his goal is to take out the world, but in his head, it's because he's doing the thing that he was programmed to do, which I think is just the extra layer that makes him a little bit more interesting. He was one of the villains that I put in the just plain evil category,
Yeah,
because I feel like I said before, that's kind of a refreshing take, because I feel like we don't see villains anymore that are just downright evil for little to no reason,
yeah,
I feel like now we try to make them a little bit too complicated, or try to make it so you can play devil's advocate with them, but it's like, no, he did not come around to play. He's created through Tony and Bruce, so it's the Avengers shooting themselves in the foot. And I think that Age of Ultron is unfairly ridiculed throughout the fandom. I understand that it's
I
the
agree.
weaker of the Avenger movies, but I think just as a whole it is unfairly ridiculed.
The interesting thing is, at the time, I wasn't the hugest Age of Ultron fan, but I think as the movies have progressed, this is the one that ages the best because you have so much of Ultron's impact in the rest of the series. He is my number 4 in terms of relevance because he really does have so much relevance within the entire rest of the MCU. WandaVision, a lot of that is because of what Ultron did. You know, a lot of Wanda's story, a lot of Wanda's path. So I think Ultron is definitely more relevant now even than he was back then. Um, Even more relevant. James Spader's great. The backstory, I did have it a little lower than you. I just think because he was created then and there, he didn't have like this long backstory like that has existed for a while. So that's why he's a little lower. But style, I think it's cool. I think he's cool to look at. He's got some cool style. Fear factor, for sure. Scary. I mean, I have no complaints about Ultron. He's one of those villains that does the job and does it well. Um, that was your number 5.
Yep.
All right, my number 4 is a save for later earlier from you, which is Quentin Beck slash Mysterio.
All right, lay it on me.
I
Jake
love
Gyllenhaal.
I loved his performance. He is easily a top 4 performance for me. He
Okay.
is one of the coolest, most interesting villains in the MCU for me. I think it's interesting that I have both the Spider-Man villains higher than you do, and you like the Spider-Man movies a lot more than I do. um,
Yeah.
but I think it's just a testament to the actors they get to play some of the villains. Jake Gyllenhaal is just like I said with Andy Serkis and Ulysses Claw. He's just eating up the screen time. He is just oozing charisma from the get go, and it's one of those like good guys turned evil. But then you see he has a good backstory. He has this tie-in with all these other movies, and you go through and you see clips from these people in other movies, and you see that Mysterio has kind of used all of Marvel as his backstory uh, to propel his intentions and his motivations and his objective. And I think it's really interesting how he's able to really trick Peter and uh, pull off this whole. It's one of the most interesting scientific things, all the little projectors. And he is a phony. He is not genuinely that powerful in like hand to hand combat,
Hmm.
but he uses the mind not only to just deceive someone, but he uses the mind to then create something to overpower someone through its deception. It's He's a very complicated villain, but I love him. I love the mystery of him. I love the reveal. I love his performance more than anything. Well, 2 performances I have higher than him, but I really do love him. So talk about Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio.
I agree with you, Dill. I think that it is one of the best performances from an actor, villain wise, in the MCU.
I'd say
Thoroughly
overall,
thoroughly enjoy Jake Gyllenhaal. I wouldn't go that far. I think that there are
All right.
better performances. But I'm conflicted to like Jake Gyllenhaal just as a Taylor Swift fan. But we don't have to get into that right now. The
Well, I
only
don't
reason
know that, but
the
we'll talk about it later.
the only reason why um he's not in my top 5 is just because first of all, the only reason why he's a villain is because he was screwed over by
Hold on.
Tony.
My AirPods died again. Talk. Hold on. Keep talking. I just want to hear.
Oh, okay. The only reason why
I'm gonna
uh
dip out for a second. Talk about Jake.
so like I said before with my categories, Mysterio once again fell into that revenge plot category, like, oh, Tony Stark didn't like my idea back 20 years ago, so this is me getting my revenge on him. And like Vulture is a comic book villain to Tony, Mysterio is the only reason why he's an antagonist in this film is because he's an antagonist because Tony screwed him over. So I would have preferred for Spider-Man's second villain to be less about Tony Stark's background or involvement with him and more about Peter Parker. Even though Vulture is in the comic books a villain to Tony Stark, I think that making him, Liz's father was a direct um antagonist and a direct obstacle for Peter
Yeah.
to jump over. Whereas, he's this really manipulative guy who derives his whole plot and his whole, uh, he's banking a lot on Peter giving him Tony's technology. And, Peter being Peter, like, falls right into his trap and he has to clean up his mess later on in the
Yep.
film. But I'm like you are disappointed in Homecoming for having too much of Tony involved. I'm disappointed that um for his second movie, Tony is still somehow involved even after even dead, he is the
Yeah.
hero as Edith tells us.
Yeah, I like it a little bit more because I think a lot more of it is spent with the whole idea of the vacation and a lot of the MJ stuff. But yeah, I think both movies are heavily influenced by Tony. Uh, but this one it's a little bit more fitting because it is the one right after. It is the epilogue to this phase 3. Um, oh, you're just readjusting your headphones.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's been a long show, so I've had to pop out a few times to recalibrate my AirPods. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Um, Great villain. Let's move on. What is your number 4, Kels?
My number 4 is Ava, Ghost from Ant-Man
Okay,
and the Wasp.
that was my number 14. So why don't you go ahead and talk about? Wow, we have the same top 3, Kels. What do you look at that?
Well, yeah, I feel like I saw that one coming from a mile away.
Yeah,
Um I
but I think the ranking might surprise you. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I love Ava just because I feel like she's overlooked in Ant-Man and the Wasp just because there's so much going on in that movie. They have so many enemies coming after them. I mean, I do feel like she is the main one because she needs the quantum realm and the technology just as much as Hope and Hank do. And
Yeah,
what I think is so lovely about her is that and her character is so refreshing to watch because she is a character we haven't seen before where the thing that makes her a superhero or a mutant or something along those lines is the thing that is killing her, and she desperately needs Hope and Hank's technology in order to survive. So as much as you want Hope and Hank to bring back Janet, Michelle Pfeiffer's character, you don't want this poor innocent girl to die just because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time and was
right.
exposed to a quantum realm explosion. It's one of those things, it's one of those moral, it's one of those like ethical conversations that we can have with some of our villains, like where we can almost see where she's coming from. And you know I get it. Like the way that she's going about it is through like by any means necessary. And at this point, you kind of have to agree with her because, like she says in the movie, it's like she doesn't have weeks or months for the other Hank's rival in that film. I forget his name at this time. Um, but the man that she's working with the whole film, she doesn't have time for him to figure it out and to get to Hank's level. She needs the technology within the next 24 hours or she will just fade into nothingness. And I think that that is a great take on a character. I enjoyed um the actor's performance, and I was it was just it was different, and that's what I appreciated about it.
Yeah. The only reason why I have her lower is because, again, I think that movie is not necessarily the same, but it could work perfectly fine without either villain in it. I think Sonny Birch is useless, as we talked about. I think Ava herself is an interesting character and has one of the best backstories of all these villains. Um, but I think if you take her out of the movie, it could still be about finding Michelle Pfeiffer, and it could still be about him trying to not get caught with parole, and you could still have an effective movie. And I think Ava adds that extra layer to it, which is
Okay.
good, which is why she is in my top half. She's my 14, but I can't put her in my top 10 just because also she's had the least amount of time to actually grow. And next to Mysterio is the most fresh, but that's the reason why we didn't put Agatha Harkness on here. A, because it's a TV show, but B, it's so recent, it'd be unfair. Um, yeah, I think the ghost fighting stuff itself is cool. I don't think the costume and style is anything interesting to me.
Okay.
Um, like, yeah, it's interesting. It's a cool idea, the ghosts that can go through stuff, but uh, it wasn't anything that was like, oh my god, that's so cool. Kind of like how Hela just like snaps the hammer. It's nothing like that where I'm like, whoa, or like Mysterio, obviously. That is just so cool in that movie. So that is why I have her a little lower, but I love that pick. I love having her that high. It's awesome.
Thanks, Jill.
Hold on. It's my AirPods. Just let me keep talking. Talk.
Okay. I'm talking
Yeah, I can
right
hear you.
now.
Okay, yeah. My AirPods are just one will die and then the other will come back and then the other will die and it's a long show. I was prepared for this. So we're at our top three now.
Final
I'm
countdown.
wondering if our top three is the same one, the same order.
Okay.
My three, if this is, we're gonna just talk about these three in the order we have them, whatever. My
Okay.
three is Mr. Tom Hiddleston, Loki.
Disagree.
Okay, so we'll save him for when you have him higher. Who is your number three?
My number 3 is Thanos.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna spoil my whole list here. He is my number two.
Okay.
So that leaves
Okay.
you that leaves you with who my number
Mad
one is.
respect, Dill.
Um, yeah, so Thanos is my number two. Let's just talk about. I guess we'll talk about Thanos now. Who's your? Just tell me who's your three, two,
My
one. We'll do
number
it that way.
3 is Thanos, my number 2 is Killmonger, and my number 1 is Loki.
So we're in an interesting proposition where we both have our one and three is the same, and our number two is Thanos. So honestly, let's take our turns talking about our number two. Let's talk about our number two, Thanos, and then we'll take turns talking about our number one. So let's start with Thanos. Um, so we both have Thanos at number two.
No, it's Thanos, Killmonger, Loki for me.
Oh, so let's talk about him in that order then.
Okay.
Um, so Thanos you have at three. Okay, so Thanos you have lower than me. Why is he number three for you?
I think that obviously he has a very clear objective throughout the 23 films. He, is successful in Infinity War. I just feel like, he has a lot of people doing his bidding for him. And I understand that even without the Infinity Stones, he is like this massive force that is hard to be reckoned with, but I feel like he relies a lot on the stones, and that's what makes him so fearful and powerful. And if you take the stones out of the equation, he's really just like a giant, like
Mhm.
that's all he has going for him is that he's tall and muscular. Um, his whole motivation, get rid of half the universe so that the half that is left can prosper and can have more resources, more room, things like that. Um,
Right.
I agree. I think Dwight Schrute said it best is that we need another plague. That joke aged terribly though, as we've seen in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, that we're a little bit overcrowded here on Earth at least. Do I want half the planet to be dusted into thin air? Absolutely not. Do I understand what he's doing, what he wants, and why he wants it? Yes, absolutely. So that, less people are living in poverty and that so we can just have more, especially with Earth specifically, it's like our planet is dying because we are refusing to take care of it and take the climate crisis seriously. So if we had less people to deal with, I think that, a lot of garbage and trash and resources would stop getting, contributed to that problem. Like I said, I the cost is so
Right.
not worth the reward to me.
Yeah, I think
To
it's one of those things where it's like, yes, we all acknowledge that we are overpopulated, but at this point, it is what it is. So we're not going to get rid of it. We just need to learn how to deal with it. And I
Mhm.
think he could have easily snapped his fingers and made the planet bigger, or made more resources, or like literally just
Sure.
made other planets habitable for humans. Like there were so many other things he could have done, and he
Right.
went with cutting down rather than expanding.
Mhm.
There's that whole debate. I think I'm with you on style. He's just this old, not old, but like big purple wrinkly dude. Like he is probably the of these top three, two of the each one is the number one in two categories. For uh, Thanos, he is the most relevant villain on my list
Mm.
because
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
yeah, and he is the biggest for fear factor because I do think he's genuinely scary. Those movies, I've never been as scared of anyone as I am of Thanos. So that is where he really seals the deal for me. Style, I only gave him a 4 out of 5. I think he's like interesting looking. I think the CGI is amazing, but him himself is a little, it's not the most interesting design. He's a big purple dude. Um,
Yeah.
his backstory is strong though. His performance is so good. Yeah, I mean he is the villain of the MCU, but that doesn't necessarily make him the best because there are those flaws. And I'll be honest, Endgame Thanos is not nearly as compelling or interesting as Infinity War Thanos.
Right.
I think just having him from a different time period just doesn't make the stakes. The stakes are still big in that last battle, but you know where it's headed. And the fact that Thanos himself is not really aware of who most of these people are, it undercuts it a little bit. It's
Sure.
like Thanos doesn't really have much to lose. He has a lot to lose, but there's not a lot of personal stakes. To when Scarlet Witch is like, "You took everything from me," and he's like, "I don't even know who you are." That's a gut punch from Wanda's perspective. But as Thanos, it's like, but him not knowing who she is and not knowing what he did to her, it almost kind of like not ruins it, but it makes it a little less impactful to me.
Satisfying.
Um, Yeah. So that's why I put him at 2. He's my 2. Like he's high up. He's Thanos. He is the villain of the
Yeah.
MCU. There's one that I just think is a better character overall and a more fleshed out personality and a more fleshed out character. And more villainous in some aspects. But Thanos is, he's the big bad. He's the person. He
Yeah.
would not be anywhere lower than 3 for either of us ever.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right. So let's talk about um your number 1 and my number 3. Uh, this is someone I put lower, and I will say right now, I put him lower because because he does have those glimpses of good, and I think
Okay.
that makes his fear factor a little lower. He is my number 1 for style. He's tied with my number 1 for style. I think his
Okay.
style is so cool. Everything about the design, the way his fighting skills are, so cool. I think also his backstory is number 1 of all these villains. I think he's got the most interesting backstory, obviously with Thor. I love that dynamic with Loki. But when you do see him do those glimpses of good, it does make him a more well-rounded character, but it makes him a lesser villain to me. So as a character ranking, he's probably the best character, most well-rounded character on this list. But as a villain, he was my number three for those reasons. But Kelsey, he's your number one, so I'm going to give you the spotlight. Talk about why you love Mr. Loki.
I am in love with Loki. I think I'm just also just in love with Tom Hiddleston.
Right.
I think that he gives just like such a entertainingly spectacular performance for um with Loki. There's not a scene, there's not a moment with Loki that I'm like disappointed in at all.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm always
Mhm.
entertained. I'm always on the edge of my seat when Loki's involved because like he does, have some good in him and we might see later on. I mean, now that it's the 2012 Loki that we see is going to be in his TV series Loki.
Right.
We were I felt like with, 20 whatever year Endgame takes place in 2021.
2026 or 25, something like that. Well, because it's 5 years later.
Well, isn't the 5-year jump, doesn't it take them to 2023?
Maybe. It's complicated.
Well, regardless,
Yeah.
after Thor Ragnarok, it feels like we had just finally gotten somewhere with Loki. Like, okay, now they're finally gonna have the brotherly relationship that we've been waiting for, and then we got that Loki taken away from us by Thanos, and so he does have
Crushing.
some glimpses of good, but at the same time, it's like up until really the end of Thor Ragnarok, like the very end of Thor Ragnarok, you really don't know like when Loki is just gonna like do his little like glitchy magic thing, phase into something else, and then betray Thor or whoever once again. Like in Thor the Dark World. I know that movie gets like a lot of hate. It's a lot of people's bottom tier movie, but
Right.
when they have their little like skit that they do where Loki cuts off Thor's hand so he can't catch the hammer, that moment is so believable because, we're not that it's we wouldn't be surprised as audience members if Loki was once again just stabbing Thor in the back, which I think makes him so still I still think that there's like a good amount of fear factor with him because of that fact. He doesn't feel like he's ever had like a true family. The only mother he's ever known died. His father wasn't really his father. He feels like another stolen relic. He has
Mhm.
this beautiful monologue in Thor 1 with Anthony Hopkins, that scene before Odin is put into the Odin sleep. And I just think that um you feel for him, you want to root for him, you know that what he's doing and how he's going about it and his execution is wrong and not the right way, but at the same time it's like, well, how else is he supposed to deal with all of this? Because he was stolen from his home. Yes, he was raised as Thor's not Thor, sorry, Odin's son, but he always felt like he was living in Thor's shadow and that he was never truly, fitting in Asgard. And um he's just always been looking really for a place to not necessarily even rule, but just for someone to kind of for someone to acknowledge an accomplishment that he did by himself. And he just wants a pat on the head. I think he has some daddy issues too. I think that Loki could use some good old fashioned therapy sessions, but alas, we're getting a TV series for him instead, which I prefer anyway.
Yeah.
So that's why he's my number one.
Amazing.
Um I could go on and on, but
Yeah.
I will stop now.
But our number one, and this is our number one combined because it's your two, my one. It's Killmonger.
Yeah. Ooh, Jordan.
Hold on, your sound cut out of my headphones again. It's my AirPods. Give me your spiel on Killmonger real quick, and I will get my AirPods back and running. I promise.
Well, Killmonger's my number 2, and I think that he I like how they gave us such a great backstory for him, or at least the backstory wasn't for him, it was for his uncle rather. But I think that that makes his, not his uncle, sorry, T'Challa's uncle, but Killmonger's father. Um, I think that giving us this, that scene in that moment was so much more impactful than just having his whole backstory be exposition. Because I feel like that's what happens oftentimes with these movies, is that like, oh, you don't remember when you betrayed me from X years ago? Well, here's my revenge now. It's like, no, like Killmonger got this like great moment where we were able to see how he kind of turned into what he became.
Yeah.
He made it his life's mission. He joined the army. He was a Navy SEAL. Every cut on his body is a kill that he got. He
Yeah.
his whole his like his style is just like his style's unmatched. I love his backstory. I think that Tom Hiddleston gives a a better performance as Loki than Michael B. Jordan does as Killmonger. Um but yeah, he's a scary dude, so he's up there with fear factor because, you know, he's a trained assassin essentially, being a Navy SEAL. And I love how his whole motive and objective in Black Panther can really be debated, because at the end of the day, if you look at his character, like he just wants to liberate black lives. And I think that that's a super powerful statement. Like he looks around at Wakanda and he notices everything that they have, and his first question is, you, why aren't we sharing this with the rest of the world? Like, I came from like nothing, and you have just been living like kings and queens in this like beautiful like fantasy land almost, and we need to be using this. I mean, at the end of the day, like he doesn't just want, you know, black lives to be liberated, but he wants, you know, to really take control of the world, as with the power and the vibranium that he gets from being the Black Panther and being the king of Wakanda. So that does make him, you know, that gives him the extra layer of being a good villain.
Oh boy.
But
Can you hear me?
welcome back, Jill. Did you hear anything
I
that he
I
said
had
about Killmonger?
no, and I'm so sad about it because he's my favorite, and my AirPods decided to crap out at the worst, worst, worst time. Um, I'm sure you covered it all. He's great. Michael B. Jordan is my favorite performance in this list, and he is a top 3 performance in the MCU. He may even be my number 1 performance ever in the MCU. I think he's so
Wow.
good. His backstory, so fleshed out, so amazingly fleshed out. In just one movie, we have his whole life story in one go. You know, we have so much with his character and just that, and the parallels with T'Challa and his family. We have relevance. He might not be the most relevant in the MCU in general, but for Black Panther story, for sure. Style, he's tied for Loki as my number 1 for style because those little marks are so interesting. They give him personality. They give him something unique. And the fear factor, he is the only person next to Thanos who has killed our main character. Sure, T'Challa is not dead when he dies, like he is brought back, but T'Challa is essentially knocked off that waterfall by Killmonger. He's the only person to actually defeat the hero. Um, and I think that says a lot. So that's my spiel. I love Killmonger. You know that.
And also his last line I
Oh
failed to
yeah.
mention is so iconic. I just had to pull it up because I didn't want to butcher it. Bury me in the ocean with my
Oof.
ancestors that jumped from the ships because they knew death was better than bondage.
That is the best last line of any villain in any movie. I'll
Yeah.
say it right now. It is so iconic. It is so good. He is so good. This performance is so good. This character, he is not the rooting interest in the film, but I hate watching him fail. I hate seeing him lose in the end, and I hate seeing him die. But at
Oh,
the same time,
I did
it's like
not want him to die. I did not
at
want
the
to say
same
goodbye.
time, I'm like I love, and especially with this extra layer of Chadwick having passed, you know, it's harder, even harder to root against uh, against T'Challa.
Hmm.
But there's something about Killmonger that still, even if you're not 100% on board with what he wants to do and how he's doing it and how he's going about it, you can empathize with him 100%.
Yeah, totally.
I think he is a top 10 character in the MCU. He's definitely a number one villain for me. Um, and he is a top 2 or 3 performance in the MCU. I'm that sold. He should have been nominated for an Oscar. If it nominated for Best Picture, why not nominate him for Supporting Actor? I do not understand. That's our ranking. That's our individual rankings. That was a long
Whew,
time, but hey, we
we
made
did
it
it.
through. Thank you so much for riffing while I was dealing with audio issues. I'm sorry, everyone, that I had those audio issues.
I tried, my man.
So we are going to really quickly give you the entire 30 with combined numbers. I actually did write down in order all the numbers. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I can hear you too. Just because my left ear AirPod died already again. I need to get new AirPods. I think there's something wrong with them. I don't know. I was listing out all of our choices in order, and I came to a tie. So, but between Red Skull and Ego, how do we break that tie?
What? Who's it? I stopped listening.
Red Skull and Ego. I had Red Skull at 9, Ego at 10, and then you had Ego at 14, Red Skull at 15. So it comes
Oh,
out to be the same score. We can flip a coin.
I think I I think Ego before, like, higher than Schmidt.
Okay, that's what you had on your ranking. I had the other, but I think I
Oh,
am willing in that's what we're trying to debate right now. How do you want to settle the tie?
do you want to just flip a coin?
Yeah, I'll just do that. Siri, flip a coin.
Wait, you don't just okay.
Oh wait. We need to decide. Are you heads or tails?
Oh, right. That's crucial in the coin flipping process. I will be tails.
Siri, flip a coin. It's heads this time. So that means that my
Okay,
boy
fine.
Red Skull is going there. All right. I'm just gonna quickly rattle off. The next highest would be that. I love that. I'm just adding up our totals, and the highest total is going down on the list.
I understand.
And then I'll go through. Oh, that pains me. Okay. There we go there. All right, who's next? There's that. I'm trying to riff a little bit with my voice. Next would be that one. All right.
Ooh, that one.
Um, we have we run into another tie? We have
Who?
Whiplash versus Killian. So, what do you want to be, heads or tails?
I'll take tails.
Siri, flip a coin. It's tails this time. You're getting them on there.
Haha. Ivan Vanko. Justice for Ivan Vanko.
Uh-huh. All right, so that was 33, 35. I'm going by scores, so me shouting out numbers means really nothing to you, but is this our only person at 37? Yes. All right, so we have 3 people at 38 with a combined score of 38. We have Dormammu, Crossbones, and Justin Hammer. Um, is there is there a person we can eliminate of those 3?
Dormammu, Justin Hammer, and who else?
Um, and Crossbones. Crossbones was like kind of in the middle, and then like I had Dormammu way higher, and you had um,
I would put
Hammer way higher.
Crossbones lower.
Okay, so we'll put Crossbones lowest of those 3. I'm willing to give you Justin Hammer. I think you sold him better than Dormammu, so I'll put him above. We don't need to flip a coin.
Okay.
So Justin Hammer's going higher on this list. All right, so that was a score of 38. Someone had a score of 39 right there. Oh, Kelsey, how about this? While I'm figuring out the rest of the list, why don't you tell everyone what your prediction as to who the villain in Falcon and the Winter Soldier will be? Because it is one of this 30. And I remember you said you did not know who the villain was, but it is one of these 30, and I want you to try to guess who it is. So while I'm writing
Oh,
down, Try to talk through your thoughts of who it
Um,
could be, because
well,
everyone listening knows, but you don't. So it'd be a fun guessing game.
he's Russian, and he says in the trailer something along the lines of, I'm picking up my work right where I left off." Um, Let me look at the names. You know what? Is it Cassilius? I'm joking. That's a joke.
That was
Thanos.
actually the name I just wrote down too, so it was really funny.
Um,
Okay, we have another tie. Thunderbolt Ross or Abomination? Do you want to be heads or tails?
you can put Ross higher. Wait, whatever
I
you
I
want to
have
do.
I have Abomination higher, so I'll put
Okay, then
Abomination before Ross.
do that. Do that then.
Okay.
I don't really have an opinion when it comes to those two. They were that everyone told me don't watch that movie, and what did I do? I watched the movie. Well, my first guess was Schmidt. So, is Helmut Zemo the main villain of Falcon and Winter Soldier?
I will not tell you yes or no for any of your guesses, so you can keep guessing. I
Okay,
will not tell you yes or no.
well, that's my guess, and I'm disappointed.
All right, I am done with the ranking actually as we finish that. So,
Great.
I have our ranking right here as to our official tallied. Give me 2 seconds. Let me put this other AirPod in. Hope it joins back. We're gonna get this in by the end of the show. I promise. Talking to the mic so I can hear.
Okay. This is
Okay,
me
good.
talking into the mic.
Yep. All right, here we go. So this is officially our top 30 Marvel Cinematic Universe villains. We ranked these from 30 to 1. This was our combined scores, and this is how the list panned out. You can go back in the video, and you will see all this should match up. All right, are we ready, Kelsey?
I'm ready. Lay it on me.
All right. At number 30, Sonny Birch. Whoopsies. Let me get rid of. Let me get rid of that. All right. So at number 30, we have Sonny Birch. At
That
number
adds up.
29, Malekith.
Okay.
At number 28, Thunderbolt Ross.
Okay. I
At
agree.
number 27, Abomination.
I
At number
agree.
26, Laufey.
Okay.
At number 25, Cassilius.
I disagree, but okay.
At number 24, Yellow Jacket.
Okay.
At number, where are we? 23, Helmut Zemo.
Haha.
At number 22, Crossbones.
Okay.
At number
Cool.
21, Dormammu. At number 20, Justin Hammer. At number 19, Ronan the Accuser. At number 18, Alexander Pierce. At number 17, Aldrich Killian. At number 16, your boy Kels, Whiplash.
Hi, baby.
At number 15, we have, where is he? Uh-oh. Where's his picture? There it is, Ironmonger, aka Obadiah Stain.
Okay.
At number 14, Jan Rog.
Hmm.
At number 13, Ulysses Claw. At number 12, we have the Black Order, the Children of Thanos. At number 11, I can't believe it, we have Trevor Slattery, the Mandarin, just missing out the top 10. And our top 10 MCU villains are number 10, Ego.
Okay.
Number 9, Red Skull.
Okay.
Number 8, Vulture.
Okay.
Number 7 is Ghost.
Cool.
Number 6, Hela.
Sick.
Number 5, Ultron.
Love him.
Number 4, Mysterio.
Okay.
Number 3, there he is, Thanos.
Ugh.
Number 2, Loki. And the number 1 villain, to my surprise, it was my number 1, Kelsey's number 2, but if you combine all the averages, Eric Killmonger. That is our ranking. Kelsey, what do you think? This whole episode.
I honestly think that we nailed it.
This is the longest episode we will ever do because
Yeah.
I'm never going to rank 30 things again. Even if we do Marvel rankings, we're going to fly through them. This was an experiment. This is the off season. We are experimenting what it's like to do a long ranking. This is probably a little too long, but if you stuck with us, please, thank you. Please, please like, subscribe.
Please,
Kelsey,
thank you.
really quickly, we're 2.5 hours in. It's been a long morning. So this is Monday morning when you all are hearing this, but it's been a long night when we're recording this. Kelsey, where can they find you?
You can find me You can find me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You can find me on TikTok at Koz13, KOZ13, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Koz Productions, KOZ Productions.
Yep, and you can find me, of course, here at the Dill Pickle Movie Network. My Twitter's down there, Dylan_Randazzo. My TikTok's down there, Dylan Randazzo 417. I do cooking videos, singing videos, and some movie reviews from last year that you can check out there. Otherwise, check me out here on the Dill Pickle Movie Network. Thank you guys so much for this. This was a long one, but thank you for sticking with us. At the beginning, I will put a little thing that says, play this at 1.5 speed, and it'll be a lot quicker. But we sat here for 2.5 hours. We hope you enjoyed. Let us know what your ranking is down below. And next week, we will be here to talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And let's see if Kelsey's guess is Zemo the villain. We'll find out next week.